Right. Do I have it right? Yeah. Good morning. Hello. Hi, Monica. All right. Let's see who's there. Monica and hey, Saul. Nice to see you. Sorry I missed you yesterday. Linda, hope you're feeling better. Let me see. Isabel, hi. Hey, Norma, you're here. I hope you can hang out a bit, and if not, I get it. And let me see. Hi, Susan. All right. And looks like the crowd is joining. Hey, Christina. Nice to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
Thank you. All right. And who's next? Oh, Fabio's here. Hi, Fabio.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. So for Saul and Fabio, we did some fun stuff yesterday in Illustrator. So don't forget to watch the recording because we moved forward quite a bit. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I am very happy to see the work that you guys added to the let me share the screen here, to the Padlet. And let me put the Padlet link here again for those of you who are like, oh, I forgot to put it in, but I have it, that kind of thing. So here it goes. Let me put the Padlet link first. Okay, there we go. All right, so there's a link. And then let me share the screen with you guys, which is, here we go. And then let me put InDesign in there as well. And there we go, share. Big ol' share. All right. So here's the Padlet link. And for those of you who maybe didn't finish the class or didn't stay here long enough to hear the homework, I had asked people to look in their daily lives. Hold on, got the wrong glasses on. Yesterday, I taught a whole class without my glasses, my computer glasses, and it was not the best. I was at I was at school teaching the Illustrator class, and I'd be, this is the link, and I'd be like right next to it. Anyway, Moni was there, so she knows what I'm talking about. I had to teach from school, and I hadn't brought my glasses. Okay, so anyway, I had told people to post examples of the kind of printings that I showed you guys, the whole bleed, without bleed, 4-color, 2-color, 1-color. Here we go. Let me Sarah in. Okay. And so, yeah, you guys did a really good job analyzing, a few of you guys. If you didn't do this assignment, please do that this week, because I do know that some people didn't hear that that was a request. So for example, over here, Monica put an example of something that's full bleed. And this one can be tricky because people might look and see, well, there's no photos that are pointing out, although, well, this one is. But yeah, this color paper is still a color, it's still a box that would have had to be, you know, it's some texture, paper type of texture, but it was added. It's not the actual paper itself, right? And how can you ever tell if it's not the actual paper? Sometimes it might be confusing to tell if it's the paper or not. Well, as long as there's anything lighter, then you know it's not possible. As long as there's any white, see these little white boxes, that's the color of the paper. You can't put anything lighter than that paper. I don't have an example here of that, but sometimes you do see things printed on recycled paper or on, craft type paper. And that's as light as it gets. It just gets darker than that because the spaces that are called white would be paper colored. So you'll notice in InDesign that it doesn't say white, it says paper when you choose white for a box or a tone. I'll show you this in a minute when we get into InDesign. Because what it would let through over here in the white areas would be actual paper, which in this case is white. If your paper is off-white, then that would be off-white, right? If your paper is craft colored paper, then the white areas would be craft colored paper. Okay, so that's just something I wanted to show as far as that. And then a couple of other examples of different folds, okay? And full bleed, no bleed in this case, and that kind of thing. So here it explains, she put the decision of what she thought it was, and yep, correct. And a couple of others, someone put up here the actual class schedule, although it's not the one where I show up, so I'm not sure if it counts. I did share with you guys already, right? That I'm on the cover of the other one. Yeah, because I didn't share it with the other students, and I'm like, wait, I showed it to someone. I think it was last Friday that I saw it for the first time. Yes, it counts, Isabel. Great. And then here too, I just wanted to comment because Norma posted this one, but then she had a typo and she mentioned that she couldn't edit the post, right? So I just wanted to say that if you head over here to these three little dots at the top, at these three little dots at the top of your post, then you get this little edit. And at that point you can edit anything. And so here I'm going to write promotional for you, but right. So that's just showing you how to edit it. That's all, not because it's fine to correct it that way, but just to you go up to the very top, you can add a comment or go to these three dots and then the word edit would come through for you to be able to make any typo or edit or add any comment or something like that, right? All right, and then I'm not getting a preview here, so I'm not sure. Let me do a refresh to see why it's not. Maybe it's a format that it can't read. Oh, okay, so now it's coming through. All right, and then here's the only one who found something that normally you might have not paid even attention to it. You would have thought, okay, it's just a box. It's a colored box, but she distinguished that this is a two-color job. It's black and blue, and there's two different tones of blue based on how much percentage of one or the other color. But that's all that's used in here. Okay. Right, so good job. You might want to also add to this one that this is full bleed, right? It's two-color job, but it is full bleed because it goes to the end. And then this is a sticker that's been added on top, but it's also a sticker that's full bleed, and it uses the same color, two colors. Let me just say that what we've been talking here, all of these things that you guys have shown as samples are perfect examples, including this, of material that's printed in a web, in a full-on press, a web press that is going to really make a difference, whether it's bleed or not, the kind of color papers, the cuts that need to happen, and so on and so forth. So what's not in it, not being given here as an example, and nor have I shown you, is the kind of things where you guys are like, well, I've printed business cards before, or I've printed a postcard before, and no one's ever asked me about bleed or not bleed. Like, I've heard people ask that kind of questions before. You guys haven't particularly asked that, but it's a typical situation. And say that you just need to make I'm pulling out here, where is my sample postcard? Well, this one is, I don't know if you can see this guy because I'm sharing, so let me stop my share for a second. When you have this isn't the perfect example here that I wanted, but when you just want to print a little postcard to advertise that one event. Wait, let me let Cheyenne in. Hold on, I need my other hand for that. Here she comes. Okay, so if you need to just make a quick a business card, right? Or a postcard or something like that. And you need maybe 500 of these or, 1,000 cards or something like that. We're not talking, tens of thousands of something, which when you print the big, hold on, here I had put the examples of this on this side. Here you go. They were on the other side. Okay, so over here I got a little coupon from someone. And then here it's like a business, business cards that the same person has 2 or 3 different of their art pieces, right? That kind of thing. And it's 2-sided. And yeah, this would be full bleed, considered full bleed, right? And then this side not. So then is this more expensive because on one side is full bleed and on the other not? Well, this is a bit different. In the past, you still had to pay a ton of money to go get any kind of business card made. But now you can actually go and get, 100 business cards or, however many small amount of business cards made for relatively cheap. And you go online and they say, just put your image here, we'll do the rest, that kind of thing. And that's digital printing. Okay, I have a couple more. I'm looking for the one other. I have a sample of a different print here that can't come up with. Okay. So there's an artist. She was actually a student here in my classes. I moved this. Have you ever put something on top of something else and then you're kind of stuck? Okay. So trying to show you these. Thank you. They weren't showing up. Have you seen in little places business cards or little bits like this that they just throw in, and it's really like a mini business card. This is also basically now you can just have your website or your Instagram or something like that. So something like this, you wouldn't be putting here. Here's a few others that I picked up from a little art show. Okay. Anyway, so this is digital printers. Okay. Including I have one here that's printed on, you can't tell, but it's printed on plastic, right? It's not really even cardboard. It's like a little plastic thing. If you go to, Vistaprint or in the past Costco, they stopped doing it right now, but you can go to FedEx, you can go to so many places online. There's tons of them where you just can make a short run, a run of 100 business cards or 100 postcards for one event or 500 postcards for one event or something like that. They will use a digital printer. And so it's fine for a digital printer if your art is RGB because they're actually converting it on the fly. It's a whole different thing. So let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. If I go over here to Vistaprint, and each one of these, there's so many different ones. And I'm going to Vistaprint because a lot of, when I asked, people seem to know this one, but in fact, I don't think it's the one that has the best prices. But if you go over here to Vistaprint or one of these places,
Diana, we can't see.
Oh, it's true. I had stopped my share to, thank you. I had stopped my share to show you the samples, and I so appreciate you guys reminding me. All right, so here we go. I'm sharing, I just went to vistaprint.com, but again, there's a ton of these kind of printers, and you wouldn't go here. Usually you wouldn't go to a place like this to create one of these, let me go back to the examples to do, I don't know, a print of hundreds of thousands of boxes of this material, of this box, or even full-on magazines, or even, how many games do you create? You probably wouldn't put game instructions or anything like that here, but you would go, if you need to do, a few posters for your building or 500 cards or advertise one event, a flyer or something like that. So if you go, let me just go to any of these. And so for example, here it is telling you that you can make a brochure, right? So say that you have, there you go. So someone's saying 4over, zooprinting.com. Yeah, there's a ton of these. So say that I go to one of these guys and I'm gonna go to the brochure. They'll ask you how many folds, what paper thickness, what, kind you want. And then they start with these really tiny numbers. Like that didn't exist when I was first working. You just wouldn't do something like, you could only print thousands, because to run one of those machines, as a test run, they've already run 200, right? Like printing 10,000 was almost the same price as 2,000, because basically it didn't make much of a difference. Now you can print, you have one event, one show that you need to show your stuff. You just go and make 200 brochures of something. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you do these things here, they will give you like these little templates where you just use theirs, or you put up your own stuff. And each one of these places will call their the printable area or the bleed area. They will have their own terminology for it. So I'm trying to, again, I haven't come into this one for a while, but if I go over here to upload design, where you give your own, right? And say that you say you want the standard one. Oh, and this is where you would find these little squares cards or thin cards or stuff like that. These kind of places can do that. So say that you want whatever, a standard amount, $100, 100 cards for 18. And so over here, notice that it's beginning to have a bit of the conversation that I was telling you. Make sure your image resolution is at least 300 dots per inch, they call it, which is actually wrong, but that's a typical thing that you'll see, because dots per inch is what they do. The kind of, from old times, you would do printing through little screens, and the paint would go through screens, and each one of those inches would have so many dots. It would tell you the resolution of a print. So that's the printing portion of it. But you, the maker or the artist, you know, us, what we're doing, for us, it's pixels per inch. So in the end, it's the same concept, right? But the material we provide is pixels per inch. What they print is dots per inch. Does that make sense? Because the dots per inch concept is a printing concept. Pixels per inch, PPI, which hopefully by now you've all read your handouts that I told you that by today. I wanted you guys to have that one have consumed, so to say, that handout. So what we're doing is we're making our material be something PPI, right? 300 PPI, pixels per inch, so that then when they print it, it's at least a print that they can use 300 dots per inch, okay? And then it tells you which formats are okay and whatnot. But then when you go upload it, let me go, actually not here, but there's I had one posted, let me, over here, when you go to, okay, here we go, it's right here. So here's where it says bleed area or safe area. See that? So in this case, it's actually called bleed. In other companies, they just call it some other fancy term, and then they call, you know, but each company has their own names. But as you can see, but without even explaining it, because they don't explain it to you here, what they're going to do, if you sent them a design just like you want your card to be, they don't explain that they're going to push that to the edges, and they're going to cut out that little bit. So that bleed area is going to get cut out. That's so that they can then chunk trim. These are the trim lines. And this is your final actual size. So say you design something, you measure any old business card and you go, oh, this is 3.5 by 2. Well, guess what? Your design for that business card has to be 3.5 by 2 plus 1/8 of an inch all around. Your design has to be bigger than 3.5 by 2, so that then it would fit just nicely in here and cut the way you want it to cut. Okay, so even when you print in this kind of situation, they're going to ask you for that basic kind of information. Okay, so now you know how to create that anyway. Adding bleed, making sure that this is something where the color continues, but it's not essential to the design. Now, the trim area is still an area, this one doesn't have it. That's what I'm surprised, but other companies do have a third box inside. And that would be what's considered the margins that we were talking about, margins, and it'll be further in here. And that's because they tell you do not put text outside of that margin. Because if you put, say, your address going from here to here, because you want one of those, you know, you want it to go side to side, then the cutters sometimes cut wrong. And if they cut even just like 1/8 of an inch over or 1/16 of an inch over, then that'll cut part of your address. So the safe text area is your margin. And they tell you do not write text outside of here to here. So really you have like 3 sizes that you need to be careful of. Okay, there you go. Cheyenne saying they use Moo. Yeah, so Moo is, Moo has some really good designs. I believe it's just moo.com. And this is where you can find a lot of these little cool sizes and shapes and stuff like that. I think Moo was one of the first ones that brought all these different shapes. Let me go, if I go into business cards, for example, they have square business cards, mini cards, okay, that kind of thing. That said, I do find them more expensive than others, but the quality is really good. So if you can spend a little bit more, and they can do gloss and fold, you know, foil and that kind of stuff, which others won't do. But yeah, so so I'm going to go over business cards, the square business cards, for example, right? And I'm going to go over to this little guy here. And yeah, and so they have these little round corners or square corners or stuff like that. Anyway, as I said, you might pay quite a bit more than you would, like you would think a bigger card is more expensive. No, to do this, it's a specialty. And so they're going to cost you more to get 100 of these than to get 100 of the regular sized cards, but you might call attention more because your card's a little bit different. The quality of printing is really good and so on and so forth. So anyway, you guys check out these things. And what I want you to do, each one of these companies, whatever they do, one of the things is that they have a place for, oh, down here it was, I shouldn't have, design guidelines, right? Each company has so what I want you to do is homework for next week, especially those that haven't done, those of you who haven't posted anything that you found, please post materials that you found around your home or whatever, and give me some examples of print. But I also want you to go to one of these printing places, right? And just write business card printing or something like that. And find out what the guidelines are. And here's what I'm talking about: bleed area, trim area, and safe area. So this one here has given you all 3 lines where the bleed, and they tell you, make sure it extends to the bleed to avoid your card having a white edge when trimmed. Trim is where we're going to cut the cards, which is this black line. And then what they consider the safe area is inside of these line, which is what we are calling the margins. Okay. So in the end, you have to design all your text within the 2.4. Your whole card will be 2.56, but your design should be 2.71. Okay. And each company has this kind of information. And then they tell you what kind of art you can work on. And so what I want you to go is to find one place at least. I'm going to go a few more that you might want to use, maybe compare if it's worth it for price, and to find their design guidelines. And over here, it even talks to you about artwork guidelines. And over here, it'll talk to you about standard size, designed formats, recommended file sizes for images, and that kind of thing. Okay. And this over here is probably where it'll tell you things like how many pixels they have to be and that kind of thing. All right. So look into this kind of stuff that before might have meant nothing to you, but at this point with the conversation that we're beginning to have, it might begin to be like, oh, I have an idea what he's talking about. Right. So over here you have DPI. Again, the printers talk about DPI, right? So it's not that it gets nonsense. This is a printing company. So for there, it's from them, it's DPI. For us, it's PPI, but just so you know, it's exactly the same number that we find in Photoshop or in design, okay? We call it PPI because we're the makers of the images. They call it DPI because they're the ones who have to print it. All right, cool. So do some research and then post in the Padlet a little bit of what you found, which one you'd be, consider that what you're gonna be making for yourself is a business card. And decide which company you think will be the one that you're going to choose to use and how many you're going to print and why you chose that one or another. And then tell me what kind of guidelines you're going to have to follow for them. Have they given you a trim area, a bleed area, that kind of thing? Okay. So just give me a little bit of a rundown, just research a couple of different places. All right. So any questions about that? And again, when I'm just telling you, go to this one, and of course, Cheyenne just said that they use Moo, so I showed Moo, but if you just Google business card, right, print business cards, and you just do like that, there's like bazillions of places, right? So it's not like you need to use Moo in particular. I'd prefer to use a different. I've used, I think I've used Got Print one. You can actually print straight from Canva. Those of you who use Canva, UPS store, FedEx, again, here in town, the best thing used to be just go to Costco and pick them up the next day, right? They stopped doing that. So anyway, I hope you'll find different companies. So we'll just mention a couple in the chat. All right. All right. So let me see. I think I heard someone uploading something new. Let me refresh if something else has been uploaded. No, I think this is the same. Yeah, it's the same. I think that uploaded. Okay. So let's head over here to my BDI. And how many of you, give me an idea again, who is on BDI and who is was not? No, just give me a sign of life if you're on BDI to see whether to keep working on BDI or not, or to just keep working on my computer. No one? Oh, Isabel. Okay. Isabel, you're on VDI. I think Norma, you might be on VDI. No, Norma, no, you're at school. Okay. That's it. All right. So then make sure that you have a fresh connection to Google, Isabel, so that you can go back to the work that you did the other day. And over in my computer, I've already opened up the applications, but let me open over here, Bridge. And everyone go ahead and make sure that you have your InDesign opened up to start with. And I have too many other things open, so let me close one of my other apps. You'll see in the background, you can't tell, but I have a bunch of stuff open, so closing other things. All right. Cool. So here's my Bridge, and last week, for those if anyone missed class last week, let me go back here to the class files. I uploaded over here under catch up. I created a file here, and this file is what we ended up with last week. So was anyone not here last week? Was anyone not in class last week? Okay. Looks like all of you guys were here. Okay, then you don't need it. But what I try to do at the end of the day, if we're going to have a file that we need to continue with, I would put the material here. Ideally, over the week, you're doing it yourself using the recording, but you know, things happen. And sometimes you didn't finish something. So I put it there in the catch up. Okay. We're not going to open that one though. We're going to be heading over to Bridge and starting with something different. And last week we spent quite a bit of time with how to place images and where to place them from and that kind of thing. Now, all of these projects that we're creating are going to need some kind of I didn't open yet. Hold on, I didn't open InDesign in my VDI, so let me do that. InDesign, because InDesign is the one that takes the longest to open, so I'm going to get that to open. All right, so then but I do have InDesign here, so let's all create a new file. Constantly try to do it on both situations here. Let's create a new file in InDesign, and we're going to I'm going to set mine into inches, and let's have it. I was wondering whether Make sure to click here on print. I forgot to say that. Just got to click here on print. And then I have to go back to inches because when you change where it's going, it changes the thing. And now here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a, we'll leave it as 8.5 by 11. We're going to leave it facing pages. And then here we're going to have an 8-page document, right? So we're going to put 8 pages in here. We're going to do a little bit of work with text. Now, when you're going to work with text, sometimes you already know if you're going to have columns or not. I don't know if you have the same templates as me. Sometimes people have different templates, but over here, there's a template of a resume, okay? I'm not going to click on it, but notice that there's some material printed over here and then other stuff over here. So this would be an example of something that's printed in 2 columns. People think of columns like what a magazine would do, but not necessarily, right? Or when you do a brochure, you could create this as 3 separate panels or as one page that then you'll fold in half. If it's a 1 page, then you're going to end up having 3 columns, right? If it's 3 pages, then each one will only have 1 column. So it'll depend on what material you are printing or what kind of thing you're creating. But so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and when you know that you're going to work with text, you might want to choose a primary text frame to be included already so that you don't have to create your text frame. Now, I haven't had you guys even make text frames yet. So I'm going to for now show you if you don't put a text frame, how this document's going to book. So do not check on this, okay? And then when you have many pages, this is telling you what page number should I start with? Because sometimes you might want to have other pages in front, and by the time you get to what you're designing, this is already page 4 or something like that, right? So anyway, this for the most part stays as 1. We're going to have no particular columns. Later, we're going to come in here and put some text frames and some columns in here, and then we'll see the difference. We're going to leave the traditional margin, which is 1/2 inch for an 8.5 by 11. And we're going to add some bleed. So let's give it a little plus here, just so we begin to get accustomed. Now, for those of you who want to see what you're creating, I kind of put the numbers and then just say create. If you want to see what you're creating before it's created, you could also have clicked the preview here. And then as you create it here behind you, it'll be showing you those changes, right? So here it's showing me that it's 8 pages bleed. So if I were to now, it's not really created yet. If I were to now say, no, I don't want bleed, right? And go and take it out, then that preview would show that the bleed is gone, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put bleed again. I tend to not have the preview on, up to you. For years, we didn't have a preview, you just needed to know your thing. So by the time I create it, it's set and done, and you can modify it from inside. All right, so now let's say create. And so here's my 8-page document. And if you don't see the pages, go ahead and it's in the second tab right there. Over here, I had, obviously I was looking at my links last time, so it kind of opens the way you left it. So I had my links opened up. Here are my pages. I'm on page 1. And as I scroll down, here are the rest of my pages, right? So we're going to work a little bit with text in here and in Illustrator today. And after that, we're going to work a little bit in Illustrator, creating something in there and making some changes to linked materials. Once we're done with everything today, we're going to have enough background information that we can begin actually creating some products, specific products next week. But we still need some of the essential information. All right, so go ahead and choose your text tool, right? It's called the type tool. I tend to call it a text tool. That's just something that my brain never puts right. It's really called the type tool, but type tool, text tool, the letter T. So remember, I don't know how many times I've explained it in this class, but I like using shortcuts. I think I say it more in other classes, but there's so much to think of. But I don't go and click over here to use the most used tools. I'll go ahead and hit the T on my keyboard. and that'll take me to the type tool, right? So this isn't a shortcut of any other kind. It's just hit the T. If I want the pen, I'll hit the P for pen. If I want the selection tool, which is the one that we always kind of need to go back to when we're done with other stuff, that black selection tool, that'll be the V. Okay, and now the right underneath that, there's a white selection tool. And if the V is the black selection tool and this is the direct selection tool, the V and the A, if you think about with your fingers, the V is like that and the A is like that, right? So it's the two different selection tools are kind of the same shape, only upward. So that one's the A, okay? Now, for those of you who were in class yesterday in Illustrator, I showed you the big difference between these two guys. In Illustrator, this deals with the whole object and this allows you to manipulate internally the object. Well, here it's kind of similar to that, kind of, in that this is what manipulates the frame, the holder, and this manipulates the actual content. So it's similar to that. So let's just really quickly try that with text, and then we'll see what I mean by these two when you place in some material like we did last week, photos and stuff. So first of all, you can't just type. You can't just type in any of these documents. You have to create a holder for your type. Everything here is going to have a holder, a frame. So you're going to have a frame that holds your picture in place. You're going to have a frame that holds your text, a frame that holds the stuff that you bring from somewhere else. So when we want to create a type for this, if we just kind of click to start writing, like in other places, nothing's happening. You have to actually make your box. So I'm going to click and drag from margin to margin with my type tool, make a box. And now inside of that box that I created, a little cursor appears. And so now you can start typing, right? So I'm just kind of throwing in anything in there. Now, don't, just write gibberish. It doesn't matter what for a second. And now we can leave the type tool by going back to the selection tool. And Cheyenne, here we go. So let's leave the type tool. And then what we have here is a little bit of type in this box. When I select this, this is my text frame, okay? And I can manipulate this box by making it smaller or bigger. And then you can shape and place and move your text wherever you want to move it to, okay? So if we head over here to the properties panel, so right now I just wrote whatever I wrote, which doesn't matter. It's just a tiny little one line. But even then, if I grab this and make it a bit skinnier than what I wrote, you see that it reflows the text, right? Let me know if something of what we're doing isn't working. Please stop me. Otherwise, for a little bit, I'll just show you a few things and hope you do it on your own. I let my coffee get cold. Ugh, I don't like cold coffee. Okay. So whatever came out in this first box, these text boxes have lots of little bits and pieces, right? Like handles and weird things. So we're going to talk about what all those things are in a minute. But anyway, the main thing I wanted to show you right now is that you need a text box that will contain your text. And if you want to move it and change it in any way or another, you have to move the whole box. If you want to actually edit that text, then you do need to go back into the type tool and select that text and then make a selection of something and change it to something else, right? So that would be actually editing your text. Now, if I want to change the font size, I would, on the one hand, let's move back to the selection tool. I could target just the box, right? So if I head over, so I'm in my selection tool, I'm not in my type tool anymore. I target the box and I can go down here. If my properties panel will give me, since I'm selecting a text frame, will give me the text properties. Look at the difference. If I click away from the text box, it is now not selected. I'm clicking here in the basic background of the page. Then my properties panel does not have any of the ways to modify text. So the properties panel, remember, is always giving you that which is contextual, meaning it gives you that which you need based on what you have selected. And by not having the text selected, I don't have the text tools. Now, if I want the text tools all the time, I can go up to my top choices here in the Mac version. You don't see it, but you'll see it at the very top of the window where you have your windows. Let me just show this to you in, I believe I didn't create this yet in my InDesign. So give me a quick second while I create this basic thing so I can show it back and forth on Windows. And I think what I had said is 8 pages, right? And I believe that I added some bleed. Okay, there we go. That's what I created. All right, so here's my type tool. Okay, yeah, thank you for teaching this. Okay, here's my type tool, and I just made a little box and I just put some stuff in there. Okay, so then over here you can see it better because on the PC, these choices appear right above the application. On the Mac, you have to go all the way to the top of your screen to see these windows. So I'm just going to show it here a little bit better. So if I don't have my tools and I want to constantly see my tools, then I would go up here to window and choose to bring up all of my type and tables and character and that kind of thing, right? And then they would appear as a panel that's constant. I'm noticing here I don't have the links, for example, which because I didn't do this here, so I'm going to pull out the links panel and there it shows up, right? So then you could put the type tools over here if you wanted them. But right now, just by selecting them, then the properties panel gives that to me. Okay, pull this down again. So down here, what we can do is we can make changes to this entire box. So the quickest one to see the changes, let's go over here where it says 12 points. And if I go ahead and make this be 72 points, see how everything that's in that box changed. So I'm not having to select the text itself. I can select and change what's in the whole text box. All right. And so these are the pre-assigned sets of fonts, right? That's allowing me to choose specific, dropping points. But if I want a different one than these, say that I want 27 that doesn't show in here, then if I go in over here and just type 27, I don't need to put points. I can just say 27 and I'll hit the return and then that'll change to 27. Okay, but other than that, you can probably jump around using one of these. Okay, so that's the main thing I wanted to show you about this, is that it's easier to handle than entire box by not having your type tool selected. In fact, you've got the entire text box that you're targeting. Because when you have the type tool, right? So I'm going to go to the type tool now. Everyone go and choose your type tool. You can also change that kind of information, but then you'd have to select everything. And you'll see in a minute why selecting things might not be so easy. But say that I do the typical select everything, click and drag across everything. Or I don't know if you guys know this, but to select just one word, it's a double click. But to select all the paragraph, it's a triple click. So 1, 2, 3. It gives me anything that's in that paragraph. Okay. Now over here, I had created a line. So when I select the whole thing, then I can go and change that just as much as we had done it before. So that's possible. But this has some limitations. I would select text only when I want to do a very specific thing. So if I want to make just like this word right there be much bigger, right? Then that would make sense because I can't target the whole thing. But other than that, it's easier to select the entire box. Think right now also that if I want to change the color of this font, when things are selected, you will see them backwards. Let me know. Let me let Amber in. There you go. All right, so what I mean by that is how do we change the color of this text? Well, over here, I'm not seeing anything that says color, and this is where I've been changing up until now. The only change I've made is font size, right? Well, there's two places you can change color from, and one would be the extended box, or over here it says appearance. And again, for those of you who've have taken Illustrator with me, the appearance here tells me that I can fill something or I can stroke something. So in this case, it's fill, but there's a big old T there. So T means it's going to give me the color for text. You'll see when it doesn't, what it has. So I'm going to click on that. And the box that shows up, again, Illustrator people, it looks a bit different, right? But I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here, you can see. But I can go ahead and choose to click on magenta, right? This is the basic color magenta. So I'm trying to make my type pink. But if I look over here, I don't see it pink. So this is if you want the negative of selecting, because when you selecting, got it, I see that. I hear you, Cheyenne. So I'll help you catch up in a second, Amber. Right now, we're just in InDesign. Open up a new document, 8-page document if you can, but otherwise just a document. Let me know. And then right now, all we have is a little text box. Okay. So this changes the color, but you can't see the color you're choosing because anything you've selected kind of goes inverse, like negatives. Have you ever seen, how many of you are too young to ever have seen an old photographic negative? You've never seen one? The colors are kind of inversed. Anyway, so this is a negative. So if you're trying to choose a great tone of pink, and for this, you wouldn't see how it looks, right? Instead, and now let's head back to the black selection tool. When I get rid of my selection, now I can see that I had truly chosen magenta for that color. But if instead I have targeted the entire box, right? Then when I go in here, this fill is now, does not have a T on it, right? So if I click, it has, in fact, that little line means nothing, none. And so if I think about it, how can there be none? I see that there's black and pink. It's because it's referring to the actual frame. So if I were to click on this fill now and give it a color, I'm going to give it a blue. It's the box that got filled. So that text box has its own existence, so to say. Even though it's holding text, you can still fill that box. It's not recommended. If you want to make a box behind your text, you should still make another box instead of filling this one, because for many reasons. But be careful, because you could have filled the box. So let's go back. If you did fill your box, your text box, and say none, you really do want your text box to not have a color. So then how would you change the color of the text that's in this box? Well, over here, you can say apply the color to frame or to the text. So you would change there. Within that same frame, you can now make all the text blue, or let's make it, green, totally different. And that's because I'm applying all the text within that frame, but I have to choose here whether it's for text or to frame. Okay, so the frame is what we call the placeholder, the box, and the text, of course, is the text. All right. Now, remember I told you in this example that if you were, I was giving here this example how you know that this isn't the color of the paper. I mean, it's shiny. There's many reasons you wouldn't know, but sometimes this could have been like craft paper it's printed on. And I told you, you can tell it's not because there's lighter colors and there's actual pure white, right? So this is what I meant to show you, which is we don't have black or white as we have in other places. We have black or paper. So if what we want is for something to be white, we would choose paper, right? When it comes to text. Now, right now, choosing paper, when we have white paper and paper text, gives me nothing. It looks like it's empty. Let's head back to black and keep going with black text. But that's the color that you choose, because what it does is the print just knocks out the color. Like back to this one. Sorry, back to this one. It just makes a hole, right? And no ink falls in that area. And so that's what it's called by knocking it out. It just makes a little hole here. You print color here, you print color here, and that's showing through is the paper. So that would be coloring something paper. And so when you want white text on something, what you're really doing is you are letting the paper shine through. Okay, so say that we did make this frame blue, right? So now I'm making the frame blue. If I go and choose my text and my text paper, now you're getting that effect of white letters. But you wouldn't have seen the white letters if the text box is, as usually it would be, empty, because really it's just a hole in this color that lets me see paper through. Does that make sense, you guys? How you would use text and color? So imagine that I print this on red paper. I put in the printer some red paper. Well, those letters would now be red. Got it? Because it's just not getting ink. So that would be red letters. If I put in manila paper, boom, those letters are now kind of yellowish manila colored. All right. Okay. Let's actually get some text fill in here. I'm just testing. I don't think so, but can I copy from my VDI into my, it's probably two different systems, into this one? Yeah, no, it didn't. Gives me the link to the Padlets. Okay. I've just had to, oh wait, but that was, I copied with the Mac stuff. Let me copy here. It's Control copy. I don't think this will work, but if so, then I can keep up with my two versions quicker. And paste. No, it still doesn't work. Okay, just I was hoping, because really when I'm in VDI, it's like I'm on a different computer, and you know, normally you couldn't copy paste from computer to computer, and that's what's happening here. I was just trying to make this easier. Okay, so basically I'm going to continue here a little bit, which is my other one, my VDI one. So let's get rid of this. Now, again, if I want to individually target any of these letters themselves, I would have to use my type tool. But right now, the only time I've used my type tool was just to enter this text, right? The rest of the time I have not been in my type tool. Let's select this box then to delete the entire box versus just selecting the text and deleting it, which if you look what would happen if I just select my text and delete my text, right? Well, guess what? I'm still left with a little empty blank box in there. And so I don't want hanging boxes anywhere. I'm going to select my box and hit the delete key and get rid of the box. And now I have no text frame, no type in my document whatsoever. We're back to 0. All right. Before I continue, any questions? Is everything good? Amber, you just joined us. Are you able to catch up? We basically have just a document that has 8 pages. Okay, that's all we did. And what's up?
I have that, and I made a text box, and now it looks like it's deleted. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'm not going to yet ask you to say yes or no. Just now, this is just that. Now I'm going to begin to see if you to catch up. All right. So now, what we can do is go back to page setup. And again, I'm going to show you this. Because before I wanted to show you first what a text frame was before we created a document with text frames. But now let's go back to the page setup. So back to file, document setup. So this is the same document setup that we had when we first created this document, right? And there was a choice over here that when we were creating it, it asked whether we wanted or not to have threaded pages. I believe it asked. I'm not sure if the word was threaded in here. Multiple pages. And here it is. And then it asked me if I wanted a primary text frame. You see that? But guess what? That's one of those that you can't kind of redo because it's kind of, I guess, intrinsic to the whole creation of the thing. So I cannot go and turn this on anymore. Okay. So that's not, I told you, you can change so many things in here. But notice, by the way, you don't have the choice for columns here either, right? So from when the product has been created, you can't turn on this internal, this primary text frame, which I will show you in a minute what that means, now that you know what a text frame is. And you can't add columns. Let's cancel this. There's a different place. You would go to edit or layout. Here we go, layout. To go and add or change. Hold on, that was not supposed to be. I am a mouse went the wrong way. Okay, so you would go over here to layout and head over to margins and columns. And over here, you can create new margins and new columns. So say that I had wanted 1 or 2 different columns and I didn't have it. So like say that I now want 2 columns and I see 2 columns, see how my document is suddenly having 2 columns. But again, the primary text frame isn't there. So I'm gonna, so again, here, let's do 3 columns too, so you can see how that works. Because I want to explain what the gutter is. The gutter is that space between columns. Okay, so we tell it 3 columns and then it gives us the default size of gutter. There might be a reason why we want a bigger or a smaller gutter. This is default size, that's it. But if you have much bigger letters or much smaller letters, you might need a bigger or a smaller gutter. So again, we can just kind of click over here and make it much bigger and see how the gutter, so the space between the text is what this is becoming much wider or much smaller. Now you really rarely would want much smaller unless you're, if you're putting text here, because then it would become unreadable. But sometimes you might want it larger. All right, we're not going to add columns to this. So let's say cancel. So basically, once you've created the project, you have to go back to 2 different places to really get everything that you got back at the beginning, but we're not able to get those primary text frames. So let's get rid of this document. We're going to close it and say don't save. That's why up until now I didn't want, so let's say no. And now we're going to actually create that same thing, but this time we are going to exactly as we created it before. But so we're going to go to print and we're going to go over here to inches and we're going to make it 8 pages again. But this time we're going to turn on the primary text frame to see what the difference might be. And let's give it blue. All right. Margins, by the way, was just the default margins, which is 0.5. We want to keep that there. Again, remember, if you want to see it as you're creating it, here's the preview. But I find that the preview, you have to move this out of the way because basically the preview creates itself behind it. Anyway, so let's just say, I'm going to leave this off and let's just say create. So this is basically going to look exactly like what we created before. The only difference is that it's going to have set up. If I click here in the middle now, like it looks like there's nothing. But if I select, guess what? There's already a text frame there. Okay, that came with the document, right? But if you click away, you wouldn't have noticed that there's anything different. It's just like, so when would you do a primary text frame? Well, precisely when you're creating something like a book, something that's text heavy, right? If it's a brochure that is mainly art and a few lines, you wouldn't need a primary text frame. But if you're going to be laying out a book or something that has a lot of text, then you definitely would want to start out having a text frame in every one of the pages. So if you go to page 2, page 3, and you select, there's a text frame. And let me show you that it's just like one of those text frames that we just made. Here's the small one. You know, it's just that it was, it's already filling out the whole thing. So this is in my.
You guys have been doing.
Well,
just want to make sure I'm aware of what those were.
Okay. I muted you there, Cheyenne. Okay. All right. And I appreciate, by the way, that a lot of you guys have to join when you're working or doing other stuff. And that's great when you let me know, hey, I'll be out for a second. I know that, you know, Friday during the day. A lot of you guys have things to do, but congratulate you on keeping on learning, and as long as your job allows you to and you're able to, that's awesome. So no problem with having to step out to actually do some work now and then. Okay. All right, so here's our invisible text frame, invisible because it has no fill and no text, but it's there. Okay, so let's select this box, this initial text frame. And I'm gonna write a whole bunch of text, right? Because, so let's right click and fill it with, here, fill it with placeholder text. Okay, and this is gonna come up with the text that we call lorem ipsum. And lorem ipsum is text that is in Latin. And why do we do, and I'm going to click away now so you can just see it. Why do we use lorem ipsum is because a lot of the times we're designing something and we don't have the text yet. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but ow. I just, hold on, my headset just flew off. The cable broke everything. My mouse was pushed over. Okay, here we go again. That was weird. So a lot of times you say, someone says, okay, I want a brochure, and you start designing it, but they haven't given you the photos yet, and they're still changing the edits and the text, but you're basically gonna, or they want to know, how much should I write? And so you need to say, well, let me lay it out first, and then I'll decide, okay, the text block should be about 300 words because you've tested it on your, so there's two different ways of working, right? Sometimes people say, here, there's material for the project. And other times you first lay it out and then you tell them, well, I need about 500 words for this, or only 2 words, please make it shorter. You gave me 500 words, I can only fit 250, right? And they have to edit it back. So when you don't have the text or the final text and you're just trying to decide what to do, Latin text is what's been used for eons in the world of printing, because when you just write gibberish, as I told you to do before, it might not really look like text. You might have words with, 50 letters before you remember to press space or something like that. Or if you put it in any real language, so say that I put it in German, well, one of you guys might know enough German to know what it says. If you put it in Spanish, of course, I would understand it. So most people know one language or another, it makes sense, but very few people, trust me, in high school, I actually did have to learn Latin. I'm from one of those backwards places where they made us learn Latin. But not to the level of understanding this, but Latin has all of the features of a language, short words, long words, uppercase, lowercase, commas, the whole bang, but it's not something people would understand. So it kind of becomes transparent. And so lorem ipsum is the name of a Latin text that's been used for eons. It's this very ancient text. That's what we use. And before we had to copy and paste it and put it in, now we can just fill it in automatically. So remember, I did a right click and filled with placeholder text, and that's lorem ipsum. All right, so here's what's interesting. We created this document with 8 pages with a primary text frame. When I brought in the text, look what happened. It filled in all the way through, The text just, boom, dropped all the way in. So when you create a document this way, it's because you're making, as I said, a book or a magazine, something with a lot of stuff, a lot of text. And thus, by creating that primary text frame, all these threads are, all these text frames are linked. Let me head back to the page number 1. We're back at page number 1. And let's add now some columns here. So let's go ahead and go to the margins and columns, layout margins and columns. And now I'm going to, yes, make this break into 2 columns. And when I say okay, kind of too late, right? Because that frame already existed. You know how before I showed you that, yes, you can put columns before and after, but when the text frame has already been made without columns, because we made this one without columns, and I lay out the text, then this isn't really working automatically. What I could do is grab this frame and move it over and snap it to the left side of this gutter, right? But then I would have to go do that to every one of the pages, right? Because the two columns, it hasn't, stayed all the way through. Now, this is just a quick way to show you that you probably need to know the basics of your layout before you start, because it becomes much harder to kind of fix or change things later. If you're going to have 3 columns, you'll know that by the time you start designing, or start with a couple pages, draw some little, things on a paper napkin, or try with a 1-page or a general layout, and then you actually create your whole document because had we created this with 2 columns already, so I'm going to say file, new. Yep, that's good. File, new document. So from here, when you're inside and you want to create a new document, instead of going to that beginner, you would go to file, new, and then it asks you if you want to create a library, a book, or a document. We'll talk about that later. Let's just go with file, new document. And now we'll do the final setup, which is basically we're going to create a primary text frame with facing pages. So it's the same thing we've done up until now. And the choices it gives you at the beginning are the same that you've already set up before. So 8 pages with two columns to start with, and primary text frame. Okay, so now if I say create this new one, and I select this and say right click placeholder with text, then that does fall into those 2 columns all the way through. Does that make sense? Christina, you have a question?
Yeah, I thought there was a way to actually like afterward move the text into the columns. Like
Yeah.
there's an option to like have it fit to the columns. I can't remember because I've had to do it before for
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, there is. I'm just saying, when you have the choice, it's as usual. It's, you can remodel a house or you can start from the beginning, right? So I'm saying if you can lay out certain things from the beginning, you can. Everything is eternally modifiable, and I'll be showing you how to modify.
But with with work, sometimes people change the layouts after, and you just have to go with it. So
Exactly.
while you want to, as much as you can in the beginning, it's not always going to happen that way. I just trying to remember what the option was, though.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you now how to create boxes and threads and all that. I'm going to show you that in a second. But right now, I was just showing you how ideally you create your setup from the beginning, and then you modify it, right? So maybe even though you don't want every bit of text to be there, maybe for the first page, you're going to want, and I'm going to head over to the first page, maybe you probably don't want your text to start here because you got to put some titles. So then you can grab this column and put your mouse right on the top of this column, and then just bring it down to here. Right out, actually. Over. I forget sometimes if I'm in the Mac or in the PC and I do the wrong shortcuts and it drives me crazy. I'm on the PC version now. Okay. So then, and you can use this space to bring in a photo or to be a bit headline or something like that. And what I'm going to show you now is how the text keeps working, and it keeps threading itself. So now, let's do a little bit of that investigating how to work with text and make it fit the design and the layout that you want. Leave these 2 open. If you want to save them and give yourself and save them as examples of the different things that I'm showing you, you can. But right now we're going to create a last one that we are going to create all these things on ourselves. And that's the one we're going to really play in and start creating some fun stuff with text. So that last one is the one that I'm going to create and save. So let's go ahead and say file, new, once again, new document. And let's go back to print. Let's go back and create the same one, but this time we will not have facing page. I'm sorry, we will not have primary text frame. We will have facing pages. Yes, no primary text frame, no columns. And let's do some margins. There we go. And bleed. So 0.5 margin, 125 bleed, no columns, or one column. One column is basically no columns. It's like the full thing. and no primary text frame, right?
We're
And
doing,
8 pages. Done. There we go. And create. So now we have a document that's kind of blank, like the one we used the other day. There's nothing, like we start from 0. We have to create our own stuff, and the document's already created. So let's, by the way, what I'm showing you right now, everything I'm showing you right now, it does not work for Photoshop, but it does work for Illustrator. That said, Illustrator doesn't do the whole page, the whole like many pages of text I just showed you. You don't do that in Illustrator. But what I'm going to show you today of creating your own text boxes, like what I'm showing you as of now, is the same way it works in Illustrator. I told you before, Photoshop is the one that's a little bit of a different creature than InDesign and Illustrator, though are similar. They're both vector-based programs and they use a lot of the same tools. All right. So let's start by creating our own text box this time, like we did at the beginning. And so I'm going to grab my type tool and I'm going to make a text box here that goes side to side right there. Make it pretty big. If you need to change this, the size of the box that you already created, you're now in the type tool, right? So you can't really change the size of that initial box that you laid out. You have to go back to the selection tool and make that bigger. So make it about the size of half of the page. Yeah, about yay. Margin to margin. Then we can right click and you know what? I have a better idea. Make it as big as the page. Make it a full page. This will give us some more material to work with. And then right click and fill with placeholder text. So we've got one page. Since we made one text box, the other pages now don't have it because there was no other frames created. It's the one frame. We right click, we put some text in there. Now, let's go ahead and select this text box, head over to properties, and let's make this font. But let me point to something first before I do that. Look at this down here. Our text fits perfectly. Why don't it fix perfectly? Because when you put in first placeholder text, they make it fit perfectly, right? So the last word is this little word that says restem right there. Just so that we can later distinguish this letter, this word, let's go ahead and grab this last line and maybe this last bit here. Let's change its color. Let's just select with the type tool. By the way, I had to grab the type tool. Select this last line, go ahead, type fill, and let's make this guy, this last line magenta. And that's just so that we can have an idea of what's happening here, what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so we just made that thing magenta. Notice that all these boxes are just white little blank boxes. Okay, great. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change the font size. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, instead of 12 points, I want this to be a little bit bigger. I want it to be 14 points. And immediately what happens is that my last line disappeared, right? Because I don't see anything pink down there. And that's the only thing about when we have Latin that I can't tell you, select the sentence that says yada, yada. I have to just make it a color so that you can see, because since we don't really know what it's saying. All I know is that it disappeared. And this is typical of text, even though it's not Latin. Many times you're working on technical documentation for stuff like you have no idea if the sentence is correct, if it finished when it shouldn't have finished. It's not like a thing that makes sense to you sometimes, whether it's ended. And so all you know is that this text looks good. 14 points is better. The only way you can tell that there's text that's missing, other than that little trick of giving it a color, which is just for teaching purposes, is because see this little plus sign right there now? So now this is telling me that there's text here that is not in my box. I gave this box some text that isn't fitting, and that's where the rest of the text is. Okay, now let's do one more thing before we go and find out how to get that text back. Now let's grab this box from the bottom. So again, with the selection tool, let's grab this box and let's make it be about half the size of this page. Now for sure, there's a big plus sign. Like had we not even changed it to 14 points, we would for sure have this little plus sign, right? So if we need to put this text somewhere else, where else do we put it? And let's make it, actually, let's make a bit more space. Let's make it about this much. So we have a lot more text there. So what do we do with the rest of this text and where do we put it and how do we put it somewhere else? Well, again, with our selection tool, we're going to click on that plus, like the very tip of my mouse has to click exactly on that plus sign. And now it's like I've picked up the rest of the text. Okay, so all of this text, over text, it's called, is like the photos that we had the other day waiting at the tip of our mouse to be dropped somewhere. So this text is waiting to be dropped somewhere. So the quickest choice would be to drop it here in another box. So say this is a brochure or something like that, and now I want to put a photo in there. So now maybe I can just make a little box right there from here to here, and that text drops in there. Now, obviously I had a much more text, didn't I? So this still has a little plus sign. But that's, my mouse now doesn't have any text. It's not carrying any text. Yeah, before I continue, there's a hand up. Yes. Molly?
Yeah, so I think I must have missed something because when I do it, it still moves the whole box. So I go with your selection tool, you're clicking on the little red plus box, right?
Yeah, so I click on that little plus sign with my selection tool, yeah. Click on the plus sign and your box, your tool should now have a little bit of text hanging from it, does it?
No. Okay, let me try it again. Oh,
It's
now I
possible-
got it.
Yeah,
I got it.
because you have to be the tip of your mouse has, there's other boxes and other stuff going on here. So it has to be the tip of your mouse and then it loads up. So it
Okay.
loads up all that overset text.
Yeah.
And now we draw another little box and that continues. Now,
Okay.
how can it tell if it really continues or not? I'll show you in a minute. But we know that there's even more text, right? So I'm going to pick this one up here and now I'm going to make another box that continues here, right? So now I've got this text over here. I'm going to go ahead and move this up to the middle a little bit. And so now over here, we're going to place a photograph, right? Let's just imagine that we're not going to place a photo right now. So here we have these 3 boxes of text. Now, how do we know that this is actually going here and there? Let's go ahead and turn something on that's missing here. I'm going to select one of your boxes, by the way. Some people turn it on without selecting and then it says it's not working for them. Select one of the boxes. Let's head over to view and extras. And now let's say show text threads. Now, once you get accustomed to this, you might not need to have the text threads on because visually it's kind of intrusive. But sometimes you're not sure if you put the right text in the right box. And so this is really good because it's showing that from this little box, which now turned into a little arrow, like or that text follows through over here and the end of that text follows through over there. Some people might have thought this was a quote and jump from there to here, right? So you need to make sure that you do this correctly. Right now, it's not about how well laid out this is, it's to show you that the text does move from one place to another. And in fact, I'm going to have us do one more thing to try this out. Let's go to our type tool again. And we're going to select just the text that's inside this little box. And we're going to color it also something obnoxious. Again, let's go for bright pink. And I always go for that so that it's really different. So now we have threaded text that follows itself, and the middle set of text in particular is the one that I've highlighted. All right, so, you know, we deliver it, we do it, like Christina said, there's always changes. Everyone always wants something different than what you did or designed. And so they go, you know what? We really want this line here to be, to just have only the first two lines, then we want a bigger photo. And then we want the text to flow into that one. So basically you say, all I need you is to put the first two lines up there. So here's the great news about this threading. I'm going to select this top box and make it smaller so that I only leave the first, paragraph up. And look what's going to happen with all the text. I'm going to move this up here and boom. So now the threaded text kind of rewraps itself around all the threaded boxes. So if I get rid of the text from here, it has to move over here. And then that which is over here ended up over here. Does that make sense? If I make this bigger, I'll see that there's more text there. But if this is as big as I can make it, because I'm going to have another big paragraph here, then I know I can pick this up and I can keep putting it somewhere else on the next page, right? Or I can put a little continues on page 74, and then I can move all the way to page 74 and drop the rest of the text, like newspapers do that, right? Or magazines, they'll tell you, keep reading in the back end. Yes, Moni? Oh, can't hear you. Muted.
Sorry. So I've been following along with you, but just for my notes, how did we do again? How did you get the checking the flow?
Of a thread, view,
Yeah, the thread
extras,
extras.
and it said showed text threads. Now that it's showing them, it just says hide text threads. So if I hide them,
Okay.
that disappears. Which, by the way, then they're still threading. So if I now decide, well, maybe I'll leave 2 paragraphs in and I pull this one out again, then things move in and out again. Okay, so they constantly, all of this moves. So now I'm going to leave only the first 2 and boom, now I have some of the pink here, some of the pink there, because things keep threading. This is just if I want to see them to make sure, because here's the thing. Sometimes in the moving of boxes of things that make less sense or more sense, by mistake, someone might have said, well, you know what, how about if we put this over here and make it a 2-column thing? Sure, let's do that. Okay, that looks better. You're moving around stuff that makes no sense to you. Many times text that you're designing really doesn't make sense to you. So now there's a problem here, right? By doing that, because if we were to read this, we would think that this follows that. But we messed up our boxes and this is there and this is there. So if you have to check and see that things are right, then by clicking over here and saying show text threads, you'd go, ooh, oh, by the way, if you don't select a box, you don't see the text threads. This is typical. People go, it's not working for me. Well, one of the boxes has to be selected. And then you see that this is going there. And then from over here, it's going there. So something's really wrong. Like you're beginning to have some big, and forget it, of course, if you ended up deciding, oh, let me put that there, put a photo here, but it's a mess, right? So it helps you to look at the threads, because just because you move the box, it doesn't change what thread goes where. Okay. So now that's good. Let's do this. Let's make this turn into 2 little boxes because I want some more space on this page, not for any other reason. And so now we have our text that's doing this and that. Notice that I'm not having guides or columns or layouts, or I'm just throwing out boxes because I'm just trying to show you the movement of text and what it does. When I click away, I don't see the mess. And remember, if I want to see how the whole thing looks without any of the messes, the letter W allows me to see everything as how it would be without all of the boxes and guides and leads and all of that. Okay, letter W. And then I can really look at it and see if I like what the layout is actually doing. Okay. Anyway, couple more things about text threading, and then we're gonna work on modifying this text itself. So the next thing I want to say is that text can be inside of other shapes. So the text box, as you saw many times, all it does is make a little box. That's it. You gotta have a little box. But you can also put text in a regular frame tool. Let's click on this. Over here, you have 2 kind of rectangles, one after the other or one next to each other, depending on if you have, the single toolbar, then they're right next to each other, following each other. If you have the double toolbar, then they're next to each other. The first one that has an X, that's our frame tool. This is actually create a rectangle, a shape that is a rectangle, but this is our frame, the one that we didn't yet, use because last time we placed photos and we just dropped them in and the frame got created for us. But now we're actually going to create a frame. And the frame that we want to create is not a basic old boring rectangle. We're going to click and hold. I'm going to create an ellipse shaped frame. Okay, so click and hold, and it gives you, whenever you see it, that something has a little triangle in the bottom, that just means that there's more tools under this tool. And you don't need to click on the little triangle, you just need to click and hold for a little bit on the actual tool itself, and that's what gives you the rest of the choices. So then I flipped over to the ellipse, which is to make circles and ovals. And now I'm going to make an oval right here. I'm going to make a little oval shaped frame. If I were to place a photo in here, that photo will be now masked as a circle. But since we're talking text, let's go ahead and pick up some of this text over here that was overset text. Click that little plus sign. And now notice that when my mouse is out here, look at the little, look at my mouse, the tip of my mouse, and see how it changes when I have like a little parentheses. See over here, I just had the text, and then over here, right next to my mouse, right underneath my mouse, there's now like a little parentheses. That is telling me that I'm about to put the text inside of a frame. And I'm going to go kind of somewhere to the very top, and I'm going to click and let go. And now my text is falling within that frame. I have put text inside of that frame that has a different shape. I'm going to go ahead and hit the W. Click away, and there you go. This is actually following that. And if I were to make this bigger or smaller, it does flow from in and out of there. Okay, it's still reflowing, it's still being threaded, but now it's going and being threaded into a shape. Okay, I'm gonna make this even smaller so that we still have some. This is why I wanted you to have whole bunch of text in that frame, which is why I first made you make a whole page frame so that we would have text to keep playing with. So here we have a little circle, and if I can make it smaller or bigger, I'm not going to say that it always redraws very well, but we're going to talk more about edges and stuff like that, but there you go. Now that's been given a shape. There's another way of shaping text that we're going to practice, which is having the text draw itself around an object that you place here, an image or something. So we're going to do that in a little bit. But for now, we have a little circle over here, and I've left a little bit of space here because now I want us to actually create an object like a rectangle. Let's go here to the rectangle. And just to make something different, let's choose the polygon tool. So now this is actually a shape, kind of like if you're an illustrator and you're creating a shape. This isn't a placeholder box. I'm going to create a little rectangle, or a little polygon over here. There you go. I'm going to throw it over here just to a little bit bigger, so it's a little bit more obvious. And this is something that you would probably normally do. I usually do something like this in Illustrator, but here's a shape, right? And so when you create a basic shape, it shows itself as empty. It has no fill. Again, Illustrator people, in Illustrator, shapes show up as filled with white and stroked with black. But in InDesign, it assumes that you don't want to fill. So it's filled, it's truly empty inside, but it has a little black stroke right there. It's showing that to me. Let's go ahead and select some overset text from the bottom of this circle. And now, look at my mouse. If I were to now click inside, it's not a frame, it's an actual shape. But if I were to see those same little parentheses that you see in there, if I were to click in here, it would still fill into that shape. So this was actually a frame that was circular, but you can also have a shape. So if this shape was much more exciting, you know, little boxes and shapes and hearts and stuff like that, it would still fill inside of that shape. We just made one of the basic shapes that comes up, and this is still threading. Okay, so again, I'm going to go ahead and grab some of the text that here in this circle, and I'm going to make it a different color. just so that we can keep seeing how the threading is working. So I'm going to make this text green. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on this and make it be a much smaller box. And so then the green is flowing into that. Then I'm going to go ahead and make this one a much bigger box. And now all the green is flowing into there. So anyway, text keeps going back and forth, okay? It keeps flowing, no matter the shape. All right. There's some more fun stuff we can do, but this is just to give you an idea. And again, rarely do we do all this kind of stuff, but it's more to show you how text flows and reflows, so that you can imagine putting the main use for this, the most typical use for this, okay, it's yes, if you have a couple of boxes where you're interrupted with some photos, but also the whole picking this up and putting it in page 2 or page 25. Not page 2, that would just reflow naturally. I'll show you now, but when you have to have it jump a bunch of pages. I'm seeing Cheyenne, I really want to learn how to make a frame from letters. You mean to have it draw around? So I always show that in Illustrator. So give us a second, because I was going to go from here into Illustrator to show you, because in a way, I'm going to show you a couple different things, but let me first show you one last thing, which has to do with, now I'm going to command minus. Let's go to page 2. And one thing I just wanted to show you, notice that when I went small, how all this text is becoming little gray bars, right? As I go a bit bigger, it looks like text, and when I go a little bit smaller, it shows as gray bars. If you really want your computer to keep showing you the text always, no matter how big or how small it is, you can do that. You can go up to the preferences and change the size that it turns into these little boxes. It's called Greek text, long story. I don't want to go into the details, but it uses a lot more of your computer's processing power, right? So to have to redraw every little letter to show when it's tiny and big. So unless you really need to be able to read that text when it's smaller, just let that be the default setting. But anyway, I'm going to head over to number 2. I'm going to zoom in, Command plus, into number 2. Actually, Command minus. I want you guys to see the spread. So here's the, again, sorry, I hate it when I'm Mac or PC. I'm a natural Mac person, and whenever I'm in NVIDIA, it gives me. All right, so guys, before I continue with this next thing, let me go back here for a second. Please give me a yes if you followed through, you've been able to get your text to reflow, everything is, working, you got your shapes, your non-shapes, and by the way, this one you can just take the stroke out if you didn't want it to be in a box that looked like that shape. Like I could go over here and tell it no stroke, right? If for that box to have none. And so then it just looks like the shape again. Okay. I left it with a shape because it came that way. All right. Okay, so now page 2. Here, we're going to do a little bit more of what Christina was asking, which is, okay, so if I do have a frame, if I do have some text over here, if you still have this one open, the one that has primary text frame, it's already filled. Placeholder text filled itself. Trying to see which example. Okay. I'm going to have you do another one because this one already has the text. Let's do this. Let's make a new box. I want you to have text frames, but I want to show you how to fill them with text yourself. To do a little bit of what, well, maybe I can do it from here. Can I do it from here? No, because this one already has the text set up. this one. Okay, this one's gonna work. Oh, I already laid the text out on this one too. Well, let me just show you. Now that you understand about the first one, and the first one that we did, I had shown you how you could add frames, add columns to it. And I don't know if you guys have it. If not, I'll have to make you do it. I don't know if you guys have this one set up this way or not. I had made some columns after the fact, right? So if we now create another frame right here to put it in that second column, because we created that second column later, then right now the text is still flowing from here to here by default, right? That's the place where it's normally flowing to. Let's go ahead and I'm going to show you by coloring some of this text again. Here's, we'll just color that little bit of text so that we can see where that text ends up. Here it is. So this text here is following this text because that's how we made it flow. So right now, when I head over to the bottom of this, it's already was already reflowing down there, but I can re-pick it up, right? I can go here to the bottom of this one, pick it up. And now I can just drop it in here. So I have kind of reflown it to the new box. Does that make sense what I'm trying to show you? Like you created that box in the middle. I don't know if you had set this up, so let me, maybe the second one, you guys have all the text flowing. No, this one we had automatic, had it flow. I think it's the first one, the only one where you can do it. And if not, I'll have you set it up again, which is basically open up a page and create a box in the middle of nothing, like here. And I just, so let me just do again what I just did. I'm going to undo that. So this was originally a box that had this whole text on its box, but then we went and column added, we just went to layout and added a column, right? So then our text didn't automatically fall into those columns. So we hand moved the text to snap into one column. Don't forget to make it avoid the gutter. You don't want to finish it there because we want the gutter. If you finish it there, then you won't have a gutter when you put it out. So respect the gutter, right? So now we need to drop it in here. So I created this column by hand. And then again, I had to, let's see if I can show you right there, make it a bit smaller. So I can show you both. So I can show you what is happening in both at the same time. So this right now, let me show you the threads. You have to turn on the threads on each document. This is reflowing to there. But if I want it to go into there, I can still pick it up, even though there's no plus sign. I can just pick it up from that little arrow now that it shows, click that text. And so then I go and I put it at the beginning of this one and drop it. And so now it has reflown, rethreaded, see? And it's still working, but everything has rethreaded. And if I go to the last page, I might discover that the last page might not have now the material, but because the last page didn't get, like all the stuff went in and now there's less in there. But anyway, does that make sense? I don't know if you guys got to figure this out, but that's how you kind of, so you can interrupt the text flow and change where it goes and it doesn't go and stuff like that. So you could then go in here and decide that you're going to put, you know, columns on everything like we just did, and change this to be a 2-column or a 3-column on everything, and then put that there. And then I'm going to add a new box here. So I'm going to add this box over here, right? For some reason or another, because I decided to put some photo in there or something that I didn't think of earlier, right? So then I can just go and pick it up from here, instead of having it continue there, I'll just pick up that overset text there and then I'll drop it in there. So now that got included. Does that make sense? So that's a bit like the retroactive fixing. You can just create whatever new layout you mean, and then you just need to make sure to thread it all correctly to have it all make sense. Okay. Even if you interrupt it or change the whole layout. All right. So there's a ton of more to this. I don't know how many of you guys are really going to be working with long documents, so to say. So right now, mainly, I just wanted to show you the reflow. I'm not going to spend too much time dealing with the whole 8 pages, because this that we've just done here is exactly the same for any brochure or anything that needs to be read in continuity, or a little 4-page booklet. But when you have smaller documents, usually the text is actually designed or written in small blocks, right? If you have a brochure, it probably won't have text that's going to continue and continue. It'll be like that'll be contained in there, in that little block in here that's contained. So usually we do threading text is because you're talking about articles, newsletters, magazines, that kind of stuff, which, as we said, I'm going to be teaching magazines and newsletter kind of workshops at the end of this session, the last 2 weeks of this session, but those are going to be in person at school. So, okay. Let's go ahead and head back to this one where we created the, all these weird little shapes, which all the rest of our boxes are empty. And we spend a teeny bit more time. Well, what I'm going to do here, we could also do in Illustrator, which is more the individual font. So maybe just to try out a new application, maybe we should do it in Illustrator, which is how to work with individual words and modify them and change them and create a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's just do that. Let's go ahead and save at least one of these if you don't want to save all of them, but as samples, I'm going to say save as and save this one as a threaded text sample. So I'm going to call this one threaded text. And for Isabel, who is in VDI, I believe you're the only one. Make sure that you save. Just go find your Google Drive, okay. And then my drive, and then you're gonna look for your digital design techniques folder, and then that's our threaded text, okay. And then if you want to save the others, you can or not. I'm gonna just get rid of the others just because. So I'm gonna say no. And then say no, I don't want to have so many things open, or otherwise my computer with 3 Photoshops open and VDI and Zoom and everything, it's like, all right. So looking at the time, is it time for our break? And then we'll continue with the other. Yep. Wow. This morning class, the rest of my classes are like 4-hour classes. So this Friday morning one is shorter, and I'm always feeling like everything happens too soon. All right, so let's take a break. What time is it? 10:44. So that's almost perfect to say 15 minutes. We'll be at 11. All right. So be back by 11 a.m. See you guys in 15. If you're still around, go ahead and open Illustrator so that when we're back, your Illustrator is already opened up. I don't know if you heard me, but if you have a chance to start opening Illustrator, go ahead and do that so that we have it already and open and come back. Hey, guys. It's 11. Let me know when you're back. I'm testing something because my Illustrator and VDI is refusing to kind of work. It's like, we got too many things open. So while you guys show up, I'm giving a quick little check to see. Give me a second here while I check. See if I can do this rather quickly. And if so, I'll just, yeah, I might have to do this in, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do this in my Mac stuff. Okay, so, let's see, Firefox isn't working now. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So you guys, some of you, the moment I said take a break, ran off, but others I told you go ahead and meanwhile open Illustrator. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and open Illustrator. By the way, I didn't mean run off as a bad thing. That was the idea. But then I remembered, oh, wait, everyone who's still around and who can hear me, go ahead and open Illustrator so that it's already open. Ran off sounds bad, like escaped. But I noticed that my Illustrator on NVDI was taking its time and it wasn't really wanting to create a file. So maybe it was still trying to process it. I'll try right now. Otherwise, Isabel, you shouldn't have a problem. It's just that I'm running my personal Photoshop Bridge, not Photoshop, Illustrator and Design and Bridge, and I'm running VDI, and I'm running Zoom, and I'm running it inside of VDI, those three. So it might be pushing it for me, but it might be okay for you. Okay, give me a sign of life if you're here. Give me a hi, a hello, a smile, a thumbs up, a little party hat. Just tell me you're there. Yay, party. Woo-hoo. We're all here. Okay, Amber, Saul, Fabio. All right, so here we go. Let me share my screen. And I had my mind. What I was about to do, I was going to go into more text stuff in Illustrator, but in the end, I want to complete a few more things that are combined in Illustrator and in design right now. So we're going to keep going with let me share my screen, the threaded, with the one that we saved as threaded text for a second here. And we will use Illustrator though, so open it up. But I'm going to focus on a different thing to start with, because I want to complete this conversation of this, and then we are going to go do that other stuff in Illustrator, like I told Cheyenne. But so I'm on page 2 of, so here's where I have, you know, all those little boxes that threaded each other. So on page 2, we didn't have any text. Okay. So let's go ahead, and what I want to show you is a little bit what would happen when you have images that you want to have text avoid. Come on, don't do that to me, please. Come on, VDI, treat me gently. I'm doing my best. Okay, so in this case, what we did is we put text inside of things, right? But there's the other way, which is, what if I have something around here and I want the text to go around it, right? So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and create a text box in this page, and maybe fill it with a box that's, you know, like occupies like maybe 2/3 of the page. So this is a text box that's like a column, but it's a fat column, like a 2/3 column. With your right click, fill it with, oh, I didn't create an actual text box there. I was doing something else. So let's go back and create a text box, and then right click and fill it with placeholder text. Make it a little bit bigger text so that it's, we can tell. Oh, I'm in my type tool. Sorry, that didn't work. I have to select my text for it to work in my type tool. Went back to my area tool. It's okay, we can move it small. It's not about the text right now, so placeholder text is fine. All right, so here's the question. What if I want to put in a photo in here? And I don't want to have a teensy photo. I want to have a big photo. So what I need is for the text not to stop in a block. I want it to wrap around it. Well, I can also have it stop in a block. I can do a couple different things. So we're going to test a couple different choices. So let's go ahead and place an image. Okay, so now don't select this text. If this is selected, when you place stuff, the stuff you place wants to take over whatever is selected. So click away, don't have anything selected, have no bounding boxes selected. And let's go and say place, file place. Remember last week we placed a lot of images. And I'm going to go ahead and have us scroll down. And by the way, Isabel, if you were in Google Drive, you have to head over to shared drives again, because this is in my drive, not in my drive, which is your drive. It's in actually the class drive, which is in the shared drives, and then double click Digital Sign Techniques shared drive, and then head over to download class files. If you need help finding it, let me know. But now we're going to scroll down, and I have a series of images here under the F. Let me quickly show you this in Bridge. Stay here. I just want to show you these images that I'm about to bring up in Bridge. Because it's the same, I have used the same image. Let me go a bit bigger so you can see it better. I have this image quite a few times. You see this photographer right here? He's in quite a few different photos, but each one of these has a different extension. There's JPEG, PNG, PSD, GIF, PDF, PSD, TIFF, TIF. And this PSD is different than this PSD, by the way. And one thing that distinguishes these two in particular is, if you notice, the rest have a white background behind the main subject. But in this one, there's like a little checkered gray background, and so is it in this one. That's because in Photoshop, and I don't want us have right now to open Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign, that might be taxing many systems. So just trust me, for those of you who have not used Photoshop before, that you can mask and isolate the image from its background, and we'll do that later, and have it floating in space, right? And that's what this is. This PSD has this photographer have no background behind it. And so that's how Photoshop shows transparency. There's just like a checkered background. That's like air. It's like, imagine this guy's floating in air. That's typical of a layered file. When you save that file as a JPEG, it flattens into a background again. So JPEGs can only be a full square, and it gives you a background again. If you want to keep that transparency around the guy, but you can't put this on the internet, for example, because it's a PSD. And then for the internet, you would save it as a PNG, for example, right? So this would keep that transparency for the internet. But PNGs, although people have been using them for print, aren't really appropriate for print. It's a format made for the internet. It's a compression format. So needless to say, some of you are going to say, well, but I brought PNGs into my InDesign. Yes, you can, but it's not considered best practice. When you want something to be separated from its background, you have to mask it in Photoshop, separate its background, and then in InDesign, you can actually bring that layered PSD file. Now this is a PSD, but it is attached to its background, so this one wouldn't work. So we need to have it be a floater. So we're going to bring this one, not the first PSD, but the second one. Okay, so let me show you. I'm going to head over here, and then we're going to choose, of all these formats, photographer, of the two PSDs. This one says before JPEG. We don't want that one. We want this one, photographer PSD layer PSD. So that's the one we want. So this is a layered file, and the photographer has already been cut out of its background. Yes, Moni?
So when I was dealing with an issue on my computer. So how are you placing? I didn't get the
Got it.
initial thing to get to the placement.
File.
Okay.
Yes. Make sure not to have anything selected. That's all.
Oh.
If you have something else selected, this will place inside of that frame box. So
Okay.
you're going to have nothing selected, and then file place. And scroll down to the F, and we're gonna go to here, the PS format photographer PSD layer. And we're gonna open that. Okay, and just like last time, when you place a photo, it comes, you know, here at the tip of our mouse. And if I drop it, just as a reminder, if I just click, it's gonna come in humongous. Well, not this one, actually, the other one I had brought in before comes in humongous. So actually this one you can, but I guess I had already I call this one right sizing. I had already right sized it for this exercise. So go ahead and drop it or click and drag to drop it. Remember, just as a review from last week, if I now look at my links, there's my linked image. If I want to check out its metadata to see whether it's appropriate for printing, I look over here and it says actual DPI 300. Yep, this is right sized, so to say. We've already done that, and so the photo is ready to go, and it's going to be good. And it's telling me that it's in page 2. So this is all the information I get from this. Now, let's go ahead and with this photo in here, let's say that what we want is for this to wrap around this photograph, right? So we want to put it in here, but we want the text to wrap around it. We don't want it to be blocked. In this case, since this came second, it's blocking. Had I brought it in earlier, say that my photo was already there, and then I brought the text with the other, you know, before, then the text would be on top of it, see? But in this case, I brought it in second, so it's below it. But either way, it's just not what I want it to do. So what I need to do is I need to create like a little bit of a force field around this photograph in order to have text not go over it, or for it not to block text. We want to have the text and the photo avoiding each other. So that's what we call about that. So we're going to target this photo, and we're going to tell it to wrap. Now, when I select this, when I don't have anything selected, I don't have any choices. When I have a photo selected, down here, you see that the text wrapping choices come up. Now, this is not going to give us enough wrapping choices, but let's go ahead and start with that. The first one, the first choice is no text wrap, right? The second, which is what we have now, that's why it's selected. The second one would be wrap around the bounding box. So we're going to click on that one. And there you see how the text became like, oh, I'm allergic to this guy, and let me, you know, go around it. If I hit the W, there we go. We've created space around this photograph, right? So that it doesn't intrude. Now that is the W that I'm doing, so you can really see what's happening. Okay, I'm gonna select this guy again. So that works. And in fact, oh, and by the way, this, if I were to carry this photo around, like I put it now, I decide to put it over here, then it pushes that text away. Okay, I mean, literally, it's like you're creating a kind of a force field around it saying, avoid me. So the text, we know, is now getting a little plus sign. It's going to have to go thread somewhere else because I'm occupying all of this space with that, right? So that works for when I want a box around it. I'm going to go ahead and put it over here again. Sometimes I have an object shape. So if I were to put a star over here, which I don't have right now, we're going to go make one in a second if you guys open in Illustrator, then it would wrap around that shape. But this shape, if I choose this one, is basically that same rectangle, right? So it doesn't seem to be very different. A lot of people go, what's the difference between these two? Well, when you have a block, there's no difference because it's wrapping around that shape, and the shape is a bounding box, which is the same as wrapping around the bounding box, right? So in this case, these two right now with this photo are giving us the exact same result. Then there's the jump object, where it'll treat it as if it's an item in the text. So if I click on jump object, it's going to cut the text. It'll leave the object be, and then it'll continue. So you've seen this effect a lot of times where you'll have, you know, a photo do this. And again, I'm going to, the W, can you see it? And then the text continues there. Now, this is a better way than to keep having your boxes, you know, do this thing where you have two boxes and you move them around. If you just need to insert a photo in the middle, then instead of having a box, thread it with another box, you just give this box the jump object wrap, and then the text jumps automatically. That way, instead of having to make my text boxes bigger and smaller, I just move this photo up or down and the text wraps up or down around it. Does that make sense, you guys? Everything good up until now?
Sorry, did you just drag the image over the text box?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I have it, no matter if I have it to the side or not, it doesn't fill here like this one did. This fills any empty space it has. This one just draws a line and will not have any fill. It just starts above and goes below. Depending on what you're designing, you might want one or the other. Okay.
I have a quick question. I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm doing wrong, but when I try to move my image, it moves it within the box.
Okay.
So
Yeah, good point. You're probably clicking in the middle. Now, I haven't shown you yet, but this middle box, which I personally hate, some people love, is called the content grabber. So it's grabbing the content and moving it inside of the box. And so it's disappearing.
even when
Right.
I'm clicking outside of that circle,
Yeah.
it does it too.
Yeah. So, but when you're in that mode, it's already gone in that mode. Click away. Click
Got
away.
it.
Make sure to have the black arrow tool and then click anywhere except for there. Anywhere except for that box. And then you can move. the
Okay,
image.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for asking. I forgot to point out because last week when we brought in placed images and stuff, we didn't really yet move content around. And that little content grabber, which just avoid it for now, because see how my hand turns into a hand when I'm over it? It's to move that content within that frame. Just avoid it. Click on the person's face or just anything other than there, and then you will move the box around with everything, the frame and the content. Because it's two things we have here. We have a frame, just like the frame holds a text. This is a frame holding the photo, okay? So now move this guy around from anything other than there, and that'll work. All right, and then we have where the last one, which is literally after the photo ends, the rest of the text will not continue. It says jump it to the next column. Now, since I don't have another column, it just doesn't show up anywhere. If I had another column, that would have rethreaded the text to another column, right? And then there's no text behind it. But right now it just disappears and it's all sitting there for me to pick it up and put it in another column, right? This is like, I don't want the text to continue underneath. Sometimes you want a design that's got a lot of white space and you really want to do that. So you want to, move this around and then you want this to stay empty and then the rest of the text should redraw into another column over here. And that's what's happening. In case I would have to pick it up from there and then, create that other column, maybe on the next page for it to continue, whatever. I'm just drawing that there to give you an idea. See how the text is there, right? But it's, if I move this up a lot, then it's continuing over there. If I move this down, then it's continuing over there. So basically that's the jump to another column. Okay. Now let's head back to the beginning, no text wrap. As you can see, the force field, so to say, that we're creating is around the object itself. The text just lays there and avoids it or not, right? So now the one that I want to show you is the one which doesn't, there's no choice here for the last one. You need the bigger text box. So we need to go over here, the bigger text window. So let's go over here, the panel, I'm sorry. Let's go over to the window and open up the text wrap panel. Or Control Option W, Control Alt W, Command Option W for maps to bring it up. And this is one that I like to have. If you're just working with text, by the way, like today we're working with text instead of with essentials, we could have not had to open anything if we had just gone to the typography, for example, original set, and then all of these tools would have been there for us directly. So remember that you can change to have all your, so here's the text wrap, for example. But since we're in essentials, and I'm going to stay with that just to not keep changing, then whenever you want something that you don't have, you go up here and you open it up from the window. Okay, so now we've opened the text wrap box. Now I can leave it floating because I'm going to use it once and never again, and then get rid of it. Or I can say I'm going to want the text wrap a lot. I'm doing a document that has a lot of, need for text wrap. Then I can grab it from this little word and dock it like right in there again. And then I have it all the time. Okay. I'm not going to use it a ton. I'm just using it for this, so I can just bring it out and have it hanging out here. But just showing you how you can move things around. Okay, so here's my text wrap box. And notice that there's some more choices here that we just didn't have in this one. So I'm going to select this box, right? And what I'm going to do is when I do the wrap around the bounding box, I'm going to do that, wrap around bounding box. In this case, the bounding box, again, is giving me both sides. By the way, it gives you a choice if you want only the top or the right or the gutter, but right now we'll just have it go all the way around. When I tell it to wrap around object shape, there is going to be a difference now because I have choices down here. Nothing looks different. But now it's going to be able to look in and see what that shape is. Now, when I did this, in your case, it might have automatically gone into this mode where it's trying to find the shape because I think that's the default setting. I don't have it in that mode. I don't know if it did go there for you, but if you go to select subject, don't, because if you have a slow system, this will take a while. The computer will try to find the subject and to wrap around it. For now, let's go to the simpler one, the one that says detect edges. And when I say simpler one, I like this one better, actually. Detect edges. So the computer decided to do its best to wrap up what it considers a subject. Now I'm giving you a photo that has a very clear edges, right? This would be much harder if you have a photo that's complicated and you can't really tell where the edges are. But so now what's happened is this really cool thing where you're actually wrapping precisely around the shape that you need. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and notice that depending on where your photo was or not, depending on where your photo actually was, it might have done a great job, or it might still have some weirdness. Like for example, over there, it's too near. If I move a little bit lower down, I might get it better or worse, depending on where you put that photo. See how that text there doesn't really look so good. So for some of you guys, it might have immediately looked good or not. Move it around until you have something that doesn't look good, like that one. Just by moving this photo a bit, I just hit upon something that I don't like how near it is to the text or even here. Because we don't have to live with what the computer tells me are the edges. We can also modify the edges. I mean, this is great, right? This looks really good. But when I have done in the past the select subject automatic, I find that it's not as good. It's supposed to be the new way to do it, but I've not found it to do, and it takes quite a while, especially now that I have Zoom and all these things open. It just sits there and analyzes the photo, and then it gives you an edge. Try it, but not right now, because I want to show you how to modify these edges ourselves. So click on detect edges, have that happen. And then look at places where you might say, okay, this worked, but it's still a bit too near. I want to modify that edge. Well, when we're in the black selection tool, all I can move around is the box itself, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in the white selection tool, which is allowing me to select the content. Hold on, Fabio, you have a question?
Yeah, I didn't understand how to get the floating window with the text
Okay.
wrap.
Over here, I had the different wraps. Here is no wrap.
Yeah, but I mean, I have
Just
that
box.
on the right column, but I can make it so that it detaches from all the other information, you know, on the right side. No, I mean the window, the tab itself that says text wrap.
Oh,
That-
how
that
to
Yeah.
bring it?
Yeah,
When you brought it in, it just is
Oh, yeah.
floating.
there it is. Couldn't find it. Okay,
Oh, got it. I thought I didn't. Sorry.
Thank
Text
you.
wrap. You pick it from
thanks.
there. You're welcome. Yeah, because here the text wrap in there wasn't giving you enough choices.
It doesn't
Okay.
show everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so now we go to that third one. And then if you tell it to detect edges, it'll do its best to find an edge that makes sense. Now, I don't know if you guys can see, I'm going to zoom in, but there's a slight, I'm in my blue selection, my black selection box right now. And I don't know if you can see it, but now there's like a little line, a blue line that kind of goes around the body. I'm not sure if you can see it really well. We're going to grab that inner, oh, I see some more hands. So hold on. Let me first do this while people play around with it. I'll answer more questions. Grab that direct selection tool. And then you can actually click on that line. And for those of you who did my Illustrator class yesterday, you'll understand. And that's a little bit hard, but when I click on that, that's a path. And see, you hear some little handles here. You can actually, oh God, it's so on white, it's hard to see, but you can grab some of these boxes. You can see it better when it's not doing a good job, when it's on dark. But these little boxes can be moved. And just watch what happens. I'm going to make this bigger. And suddenly any text that was here is going to be pushed away. I'm going to grab it over here and I'm going to go to this one where I didn't like it. And I'm going to grab that little guy and push it out, right? Now, since I only pushed that letter out, now I've got that little guy in there. So I need to maybe move it over here. It's like I'm moving the edge of this thing to create a different space around it, okay? And over here too, I'm going to say I want this there. Now, again, this might be easier for people who took the Illustrator class yesterday where I showed you about anchors and paths. Other than that, look for these little boxes, just little box. Don't forget those little handles, a little box to grab, click and grab and push out so that you can create your own line of space that you want to have it respect. Like if this seems a little bit too near for you, you can then grab this little box and just move it out a little bit more so that it doesn't get so near to your text. Now, while you guys play around with this, let me take questions. So Amber?
I messed up something in the relationship of the image to the text because it thinks the text or the image is connected and it sort of has one of those blue tracking lines after it and it won't
Okay.
relate.
Go ahead and share your screen because I can't see what the mess up might have been. And then I'll be able to help you. Okay, so give me a sec. Oh, okay, so there's like a thread to the image. I see. Well, here's the point, guys. When you mess up, and if I'm not around to tell you how to undo it, and even when I'm around, many times it's easier to just undo than to fix, right? Instead of breaking this thread connection that she set up at some point, the easiest thing is to just do Command Z. Are you on Mac or PC? You're on a PC, so Control Z, tap a few times until that becomes disconnected. 90% of the times that'll be easier than to find the way to break that thread link, right? So hold down the Control key and then tap Z a few times until that thread link disappears.
Well, I think it happened when I placed it. So
Yeah, it could have happened who knows when, right? So you have to kind of go backwards quite a bit. So hold down the Control and then tap, 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 like keep tapping. No, don't keep doing stuff. Don't keep clicking. Every time you click, you create new history, right? So
not
just hold down your Control key, hold down the Control key and then tap maybe 10 times, 20 times, whenever time you set it up, right? And it's possible that it won't work because when you break, so I have to explain it, when you break the thread of your history, and she might have done other stuff now that the history isn't there anymore, then basically we have to fix it. But I was just giving it a try. I'm not hearing you clicking a lot. Have you?
oh, I've clicked like 30 times.
Okay, good. So then maybe at this point you can just say, too late. It's too far back in the history. Or when you're in the, by the way, when you're in the middle of doing tap, 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 but the Z's, this is easier to show in Photoshop, which shows you actually the history. When you interrupt and do something, anything, click on something, your whole history thread changes and then you can't go back on the old history. So if you've been tap, tap, tapping, keep tap, tap, tapping without interrupting to do something else. That moment you do something else, merely a click on something else breaks that history and then you've kind of lost the path, right? Again, visually, you'll understand this if I show it to you in Photoshop right now. She seems to have lost that thread. that path. So the easiest thing to do right now is to just get rid of this photo, but not get rid of the, right now you're in the white selection tool. So if you hit delete key, you're only going to rid of the content. You need to select the black one and then click away and select again, because right now you're still selecting the content, like click away. Yeah, and now select that box. There you go. And now just hit delete. You've created like an anchor. It's a whole different thing that is just not even. So now, remember I told you, make sure you're not selecting your text. And now place the stuff in. You place the stuff in with your box selected. So then it became kind of like a whole different creature. So now that it's not selected, and now you press the place, now it'll come in normally.
Yeah, I figured I missed a crucial moment.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just don't have anything else selected, because if you're placing a text, an image into the text box, which is what happened, then it became kind of threaded as if it's supposed to be part of that text box. Got it? So now they're two separate creatures, and now you can make it work.
Got it. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you guys, you kind of saw there, for better or for worse, why I was telling you, make sure it's not selected. But I'm glad someone did, because then I could show you guys why that's not a good idea. It became like a photo that's supposed to be inserted into that text, and it was like an anchor, and it just creates all other sorts of complications. All right. Cool. So when Control Z or Command Z doesn't work, at first, sometimes people just do 1 or 2 and think, oh, it didn't work. But sometimes it took 10 clicks to get to where you are and you forgot. So do 10 times. But if it truly isn't working, just delete and start again, because somewhere in the process, something happened. And in this case, it had been in the process of importing it. All right. Any other questions before I start sharing again? Everyone give me a yes if you've been able to manipulate that border. Okay, not just get the border that automatically comes in, but if you're able to go in and grab that little border and manipulate it to extend it to make it a bit bigger. If so, give me a yes. Okay, most of the yeses. Amber, you're probably still giving it a try since you just got here. And okay, so let me zoom out a little bit. Now, again, when I zoom out a lot, it turns into Greek text. Let me zoom one further in. If this photo could handle being bigger, which because of the link here, remember the video, the metadata.
Diana, you're not sharing at the
Oh,
moment.
thank you, thank you. Okay. And share. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. If this image could take being any bigger, then I can change the size of this. And this is what I did teach you the other week about changing the sizes of the photos when they come in and out. We're going to do that now. But if it could be any bigger, that bounding box kind of stays with it. So I look then at the metadata to see, well, can it be any bigger, right? So I'm going to go to the link and see it's already at 300 PPI, and I want this to print in high quality. And this is the test to see who read the handout. Can I then make this any bigger at this point? Can this photo be made any bigger in this document and still look good?
No, I mean, you would have to enhance it.
Give me a vote. Give me a yes, it can be made bigger, or no, it can't be made bigger. And then I'll ask you guys to tell me why. And it's okay if you don't know, by the way. But if you do know, then green for yes and red for no. Okay, so those of you who are, no one's saying no, maybe because you see a lot of yeses, so you're thinking that, aha, Fabio. So tell me why no, and then let's get some yeses. Why do you think no?
I mean, I was gonna say no, because if you make it bigger, the pixels get bigger, and so like you lose the, yeah, that's not the right explanation, but I mean, if you make it bigger, you lose PPIs.
Yeah, there
But
you
then
go.
I thought, but actually you could make it bigger by enhancing the photo, and so
Okay.
like adding some pixels in there.
Yeah,
Or no,
so
I'm
he's
not sure.
taking, you've taken my Photoshop class, so you know a little bit about, there's a way to trick us, right? But imagine you don't know that detail. So your answer is partially correct, right? So the no is partially correct. If you want this to stay at 300 PPI, no, you can't make it any bigger. But some of you said yes. Why did you say yes? Because that is actually correct, but there's a slight caveat, and maybe one of you guys who said yes can tell me what that caveat is, which is, who wants to speak up to why you said yes? Cheyenne, Saul,
Yes, at 300 PPI is a big resolution. You can make it bigger and it's gonna still looking pretty good.
up until what number is it still gonna work?
I don't know the number, but I know that the fact you can go higher and make it look the
Yeah.
same.
I thought it was 240.
Yeah, so that's the thing. 300 is the golden, yes, so great job. Yes, everyone. I don't know who spoke. Was it Cheyenne who spoke up?
Amber.
Oh, Amber, there we go. So, yes, 300 is ideal. You want to try to always target for 300, but suddenly it's like, oh, this photo is supposed to be a bit bigger, just a little bit bigger. And oh, I'm at 300. Can I push it? Sure. If you want a good high quality print, you can push it, and ideally not less than 240 PPI. Even then, some people can detect it, and a lot of people will notice no difference, no difference. Like, you have to be a very trained eye to notice a difference. But caveat, and this is going to be a very high quality photo printed on a very high quality magazine, take like National Geographic on glossy paper, you know, you read it at this distance, then yeah, you really don't want to push it. I don't really like to go under 250, even though the article says 240. Professionally, when we were working on coffee table books, we never went under 260 actually. So there's some leeway there. But as soon as it starts going lower and lower than that, you begin to see the loss of quality. That said, if this is going to print on the Independent newspaper, I don't know how many of you are local to Santa Barbara, but it's like a newspaper newsprint we have here. It's on newsprint. Newsprint is the kind of paper that already, when you put in a drop of ink, it kind of goes shoop, like toilet paper. It like absorbs, right? So the ink spreads. So the photos will not look as sharp. The same exact photo you print in the newsprint, and then you print on, you know, glossy, high quality magazine paper. The photo is the same photo, but on the glossy paper, it's going to look really sharp and sharp and full of details. And on the newsprint, it's going to look much fuzzier. It's the medium is being printed on. So yeah, you get away with having a less than 240 if you're going to go to newsprint, right? You always have to consider the output. So let's consider that this is a good high quality brochure, that you can't go less than 240. So how do we make this bigger? Well, if we don't have our link opened up, like if we don't look at this and we make it bigger, and then you won't have an idea if it's correct or not. Let's go to one of these corners. Put your mouse on one of the corner and just watch for a second. Don't do this. But if all I do, and I'm on my black selection tool, if I now just go to the corner with nothing else and make it bigger, all I'm making bigger is that frame. Remember, I told you that frame and content are two separate things here. Now on the text, when I made the box bigger, it did make a difference. Text did reflow, but in the case of pictures, it doesn't. I'm going to undo that. If on the other hand, I go to my white selection tool, click away, click again. Just notice the box is now brownish red instead of blue like before. I don't know if you can tell the difference. If I now go ahead and select just the content and now go to the corner and make it bigger, I am making the content bigger, but I didn't make the frame bigger. So now the content is outside of the frame size, right? So, right, that's another way you can do things if you want to make something bigger, but still crop it. But that's not the solution either. I'm going to undo. I'm going to go back to the regular selection tool. So what I need to do is move content and frame together. Treat them as two things that need to be moved together. So if I hold down the, what am I in? I'm in PC or Mac right now. If I held down, I need to see my shortcuts. There we go. On the PC, it's both the Control and the Option key. And on the Mac, it'll be the Command and the Option key. Okay, so
when it gets more complicated like this, I really need to look down at my keyboard because I'm doing 2 at a time and it's not an automatic. So Control and Alt for PC, Command and Option for the Mac. And now if I go and click, I can make both bigger at the same time, frame and content, and smaller, right? So now without distorting it. Now, if I don't hold on to Shift, I'm still distorting it. See how the guy is going like whoop, whoop, long or tiny, right? So I'm like, ah. So there's one more thing we need to press. If it's a photograph, we also need to press the Shift. I'm going to Control Z, Z, Z until I'm back to the original one that's not distorted, right? So Control Z until you have no other option changed. And now add the Shift to everything, because the Shift is what constrains that shape to stay proportional. So Shift, Control, Option if you're on a PC, Shift, Command, no, Shift, Control, Alt if you're on a PC, Shift, Command, Option if you're on a Mac. With those 3 things clicked, now you can make this. This is the problem. The Control key on a Mac actually, when I'm in VDI, this doesn't work. The Control key on a Mac gives me a right click. So this is a hard one to demonstrate on VDI with a Mac keyboard. So I'm going to just do these 2, and then I'm going to try to guess at it not distorting. All right, so there we go. So now I've made it bigger. Let's see what happened. If I just do that and it looks good, it's like, yay, I got it bigger. And if I don't check the link, the stuff we did last week, I won't know if I did right by it. So now, what do you guys think? Is my print going to be good? The size I just made it?
Yes, it's gonna be good because you still have a 300 PPIs. No?
If you, I think you weren't in the class last week, so, but nope. I have stretched it out, and my effective PPI is only that matters.
Effective one is 227.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So the actual PPI, the photo from Photoshop is still at 300, but since I stretched it in InDesign, making it bigger than it was, I have effectively reduced the pixels per inch. So now it's showing up as 227, and that's too low. Okay. So I pushed it, made it bigger than it should be. So I'm going to undo that.
So then to be able to use it at that size, we need to go back to the Photoshop and increase the PPIs, right? And eventually.
Yeah, and in Photoshop, there's a way to do it that's good. If you just stretch it out in Photoshop, you're just interpolating that photo is still going to look bad. But if you really do need it, say that you really did need it at that size, like no matter what, you still need it at that size, and you can't do the whole external thing that I taught some of you guys in Photoshop. Sorry, then you just push it in Photoshop, and the Photoshop engine will do a better job of interpolating than the InDesign will. Okay, so if you have to do it, then you might as well do it in Photoshop and bring it in here, because the Photoshop engine is made to do that, versus InDesign will just stretch it out indiscriminately. So now I'm going to go back and redo it and push it not more than 240. And if I am limited to that, this is the photo that I have, like there's no other option, then I have to, again, the Mac, this is the one time when the Mac, when I have to use the Control key for the PC, the Mac keyboard gives me a right click, never mind. So I'm going to leave it there at 246, just because it's in my VDI, it's hard to demo. And I have to keep an eye on this link. I can't just willy-nilly make things bigger and smaller without paying attention to the stuff I taught you last week. Okay, so now I've pushed it to 246. That's going to work. And it's still doing its bounding box. I can still click on this and move it around to wherever I want, but that's as big as I can make it if I'm going to make it look good. So now I'm going to put it down there, and there you go. Now, be careful, because with this last movement that I did, look at this weird stuff that happened there, right? Like I have D and then the word that's, and that's because that little edge that I had modified, that little border that I had modified, worked well when it was sitting in that other place. But now over here, it's not working so well because it's making it skip. So be careful when you do that little thing on those little modifications of this wrap. you want to make sure that it works if you change or move your image in any way, shape or form. Okay, so now you've been able, you can like make it hide. Okay, so any questions about this? Saul, you have, your hand is out?
Yes, so then how big can we make that picture? I know you already show us how to do it. How do you ended up knowing the size by the pixels and the on the data dimension side? How do you multiply that to be able to know what is the actual
Just
size
to,
that you can?
so
image?
right now, all I can do is check the link and read whatever the image came with from, in this case, it's something from Photoshop because it's a PSD. So I know I used it. It originally came in from Photoshop. If it said JPEG, I might have not gone even through Photoshop with it. But this metadata is going to tell me whatever it is. Were you here last week? So I think maybe you missed class last week.
I was here and I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah, so I just want to say anyone who's in class who missed last week's class, we did a lot of explanation of this, but you didn't really have an in-depth knowledge yet of what PPI meant or didn't mean. And I said we'd talk more about it, and I sent you all to read the handout, and then we're going to talk a little bit more. But in design, we're not going to change unless we do this extend, making it bigger or smaller. We're going to try not to make many of these changes. What we're going to try to do is that if there's anything here that needs to be changed, we're going to go back into Photoshop, open up Photoshop and resize or resample the photo in Photoshop. Okay, we're going to go ahead and work on that. Maybe not this week, but we'll work on it in here to say, if I have a photo that truly needs to be resampled in Photoshop, how do you handle it? And then I'll open Photoshop, which I haven't really opened Photoshop much in this class yet, other than the first day. So we're going to do that. So right now, all you can do is look at it, read it here and go, this does or doesn't work. Like if this said 72 PPI and you're looking at it and you're putting it in here and it's like, okay, it's great. If you didn't check on the links, it would look just as good as this and it wouldn't tell you that this is bad. So you look at the links, you read the metadata and you go, all right, looks like I need to go into Photoshop to do something to this photo, or no, this Photoshop is doing great the way it is. I don't need to go into Photoshop. This one's ready to go. Okay. So any fixing or changing of the photos is not going to happen here in InDesign. Same in Illustrator. You can bring photos into Illustrator, but you cannot manipulate them in Illustrator. You have to manipulate them in Photoshop. So pixel-based image can only be manipulated in a pixel manipulation program, which would be Photoshop, okay? Not Illustrator or InDesign, which are vector files. Now, one thing that we haven't done yet is understand the link connection in a document, or we haven't like deeply understood. I'm gonna have us do one more thing with Illustrator, which I had you guys open, and then we're gonna come back here and modify this in Photoshop. So I told you guys to open Illustrator. Please open Illustrator. And let's make a new file. And just go with whatever default is set, because right now I don't really care what the default is going to be, what the setting is going to be. Say create. And this is what I was testing out during break, that my VDI is reaching its limits to how much it can do. And that's why I think I might have to show this to you in my Mac versions. Look how long it's taking to create a basic document. Oh. You know what? I'm gonna abandon it. I'm not gonna do Illustrator. I'm gonna end this process because it's taxing it. So let me go to my Illustrator. And let's just make any old file here. And what I want us to do, head over to the Illustrator tool to the Illustrator, to the rectangle tool that you might have here. Some of you who took my Illustrator class yesterday, we made stars, so you might have it set in star already. For everyone else, go over to this rectangle tool and choose the star. And then just click and drag. And the star that you're gonna get is actually, if you haven't done anything here before, will be this white shape. Right, so go ahead, and what we're gonna do to that white shape, head over to the fill, give it a color so that we actually can see it. And that's all. It's just a basic star. Okay. Now this has been created in a document. Give me a yes once you have your star created. This is a star created in a vector-based program. Here's the thing. Up until this, Illustrator 2023, and InDesign 2023, you could not copy paste between them. As of Illustrator and InDesign 2023, you can make a shape in here, copy it and paste it into your InDesign. This is new. So anyone in the past, we would have had to save this file as a vector format, whichever format we chose to save, and then import it, place it like a photograph. So the same thing we did, this is what we would have to do. So if you have an older version, you still have to do that. But yay, for you guys who are at this age learning how to do this, you can just copy paste. So let's do that. Get that element, and you can right click and copy, or shortcut, Control C or Command C to, not to cut, sorry, to copy. Now, I don't think in my Mac version I have this created, so let me just really quickly do the thing that I have in my VDI. Let me place go to my digital design techniques. Sorry, I'm having to recreate in this one. Here it is, that one, and that one. Drop it in here, and then let me give it that bounding box. Let me get my text wrap and choose that one and detect edges. Okay, so now I'm at the same spot. Okay, so now let me go and paste in here that star. Command V or Control V to paste that star. So the same thing that we did with a photograph, we can do with a vector shape. Or had we imported a vector shape, but in this case, a copy paste did it. And again, all of the wrapping works the same way. So now I'm going to wrap around this shape. And in this case, it doesn't need to detect the edges because the shape is the edges, right? And so in this case, it's simpler. I can either wrap around the whole bounding box, I can wrap around the shape. And the only problem with a star like this, let me do this now like that. There we go, I'm gonna put it further in when I hit the W, so you look at it, is that now, because this automatically wrapped around the shape, is that if this were like a circle, that would be great. Because it's a star, now this is kind of jumping. See how over here and over here, it kind of jumps over. And if you have it in the middle, that might work, right? But it's kind of hard to read, right? This is a very complicated, that's why I had us make a star, which, because it looks kind of weird. You really wouldn't want, it's working, it's doing the jump like it should, but who's gonna, read that way unless it's very well done? It's a mess. So this is when, again, I'm gonna put it a little bit more here on the side. This is when the modifying the bounding box, it comes really in handy. So again, I'm going to go to the direct selection tool, and I'm going to approach, and let me, which is I'm in the Mac version, right? Okay, Command plus to approach. Oh, I don't know. Do that. Plus, plus, plus. And so now I'm going to modify that, the bound, oh, by the way, in this case, the bounding box that's telling this text to go away is matching the shape. So there it is. So I grab my direct selection tool and I pull out, and it's not the shape that I'm changing, rather the bounding box, right? So I pull it out a little bit, and in this case, I'm going to just tell it to be square over here. Like I want it to draw the star shape over there, but I don't want these bottom ones, right? So I'm modifying that option here so that it does kind of take that shape, but it doesn't do that weirdness over there. Does that make sense? I'm gonna say clear all feedback, and then I'll have you guys give me yeses when you've managed to modify that boundary around this shape, as well as if you've managed to modify that boundary around a more complicated shape, which this one was. Like this one should have been easier to start with, and I started with a photo, but there you go. Give me yeses when you've managed to accomplish both. And then let's by now make sure to take screenshots of the other one that we had done before. Although had we, I think in the other one we've continued, is it the same document over here? Yeah, and the one that I did with you guys, this is all still one same document. Since I had to recreate it down here, it's not the same document for me. So I'm going to save it. But anyway, for you guys, it's the same. So just do a regular save. I'm going to have to do a save as and create it again because I haven't. So this one is wrapping and boundaries. Let's call it. Okay. All right, do some screenshots. Make sure to post for those of you who might have lost the link or don't have it handy or who dropped down it in again. Then there's the link again. I just put the link in the chat. Okay, so now Isabel, I don't see a yes. Do you need a hand? Is everything good? Amber? You're all good, Amber? Is it working for you?
Yes.
I keep modifying the shape. Like I can't find the, also I
Okay.
can't do edges. I don't get the option. Like it's gray for the type for my text wrap.
This shape, you're modifying this shape itself?
Yeah, I can't find the bounding boxes, I guess. I don't have those.
All right, but I'm surprised that you're able to modify the shape. You shouldn't be able to. So how are you modifying the shape?
I think I got it. There we go. I don't know.
Okay, I'm just curious, like, can you modify the shape? 'Cause I didn't.
Yeah, I was changing the whole star. Yeah,
Oh, how weird. I wonder where you were in.
with the direct selection tool. Yeah.
Underneath it. Okay, once you get rid of, once you've moved the boundary out of the way, right? So if the boundary, you moved it, then what's left is this guy. And by the way, this is one of the advantages to having it as a copy paste, because then you can modify this shape inside of InDesign, which allows you to use the tools that you use in Illustrator. It's not as complex. You might be better off, of course, designing this in an Illustrator, but you can do some minimal modifications. This is the kind of stuff that I showed you yesterday in Illustrator, right? Anyway, I'm going to leave it a star. Well, here, let me leave it a less of a star so that I can just demo that to you. But what you first would have grabbed is that boundary in there. And so that moves the boundary. So then you have to then move it out of the way, and then you can grab that little guy. Okay, so yes, vector files can be modified inside of a vector program, but Photoshop files have to be modified inside of Photoshop program. Okay. All right. I'm seeing that I'm hearing little dropping ins that you guys are dropping things into the Padlet. So that's good. Great. Thank you. Now, let's get back to Illustrator, which is what I had asked you to open Illustrator. And right now, all I told you to do is to make a little star. So now let's zoom into that one, into that little star, because Cheyenne had asked, and I said, I'll show you that in Illustrator. How can you get text? I've shown you text in many different ways, but how can you get this text to actually, the way she phrased it was be the frame, right? So basically I'm going to say the text is going to create that star, right? So in this case, since we have a star already done, let's work with a star. And here's the good news. This star is not related, by the way, to this star. Because I did a copy paste. This is not, this is one of the good news of being able to copy paste. This is new. This is really new. So I forgot to even mention this because this is new to me. In the past, this shape would have been also something that you brought in and it would have been a link in here. But notice that now this is not a link. This is inside of InDesign. It exists in InDesign and any modifications made to it only happen in InDesign. You'll notice a little bit later, and that's what I'm trying to get to at the end of this, and I hope I can have a minute to do that, is that if I modify this one in Photoshop, it'll modify in here because I will be modifying the actual linked element. But this star is independent. It's not a link. It's been what we call embedded. This has been pasted in here and it's unique. It's its own star. If I want to change it, I can even change the fill. I can give it another color. This is now its own creature, right? Let's head over to InDesign, to Illustrator now. And thus, what I'm trying to say is this star can be modified and it won't affect the other document, okay? Because we made it, we got it, but now it's flying on its own. All right, so now we're gonna modify this document. And let's go ahead and create a little text box here. And in Illustrator, there's another kind of text that I'm gonna teach you next week. But in order to, over here in Illustrator, if you simply click, you can get some text is what I'm trying to say, which you couldn't in InDesign. That's not what I want. Go ahead and say Control Z if you did that, or Command Z if you did that. I don't want that. I want equivalent to what we had in InDesign. I want you to create a text box. You can create two kinds of text in Illustrator, right? So I want the text box. So basically stretch out like that. And here you don't need to put in placeholder text. It just comes in automatically. Okay. So this placeholder text, we are now going to click away. There you go. This is the text that we're going to use. And let's go ahead and that little box. This is very similar to InDesign. If I now make this box smaller, see how I get that little plus sign right there? Kind of just like what I taught you before. So if I make it bigger, there's nothing there. That box is empty. If I make this box smaller, then I can pick up some of that text, okay? So anyway, that's just to show you that now there's a couple of other little gizmos in here that are specific to Illustrator. But for now, just make that box a little small so that you can actually pick some text up. And there you go. This is what it looks like when you pick up text in Illustrator. If now I wanted to click and drag and make another box, there the text threads in Illustrator show up automatically also. You don't need to go and say show threads. It shows you the thread automatically. Okay. So now from here to here, if I move this in and out, these change. So basically the same stuff that I've been showing you is happening here. Okay, same behavior in Illustrator as in InDesign. So everything you just learned what works for the other. Got it? If it all is in this little mini demonstration, if it's working for you in Illustrator, then give me a little yes, it's good. And I'm going to delete the second box because now what I really want is to use this text to do something else. So make the little box small so that you do have some overset text here to click on. But I don't have enough yeses yet. Let me make sure that everyone still gives me a yes. So Amber, Isabel, Christina, Moni, is this working for you in Illustrator? Like the same little make a box, pick up the text, drop another box, have it be threaded. It's all good? Moni?
No,
Okay.
I'm still, I know it's actually quite simple, but somehow it's not, I can
That's
do a
fine.
new box, but it's not threading it.
Okay, because the first box that we create,
Yeah.
okay, that's the one that's containing the text. So maybe you didn't make it big enough. Then what I did is I made it small so that there would be overset text. So we're not making another box. We're
Right.
picking up
Okay.
that text. Once you do see that little kind of icon that where I'm hanging text, then you can make another
Okay.
box.
It worked this time.
And then that automatically happens. It just threads automatically because you picked it up from there. But if you make a box first and then try to thread it, that's different. Anyway, so right now, let's pick up that text again then. I'm gonna make sure that it's hanging from your mouse. And let's head over to this guy here. And the first thing we're going to do is, again, notice, and I don't know, maybe it's just too dark, might have been a bad color for it. But when I put my mouse inside the shape, look at the shape. See how when I touch the path, like when I touch the little path, see how it becomes a parentheses? And then when I go a little bit further, it's back to being not a parentheses. Can you tell? Like that little box here has like a little sharp corners. When I touch the path, I get like parentheses on my little shape. And then when I'm inside again, it becomes again square. Okay, so it's kind of goes through 3 little states. Yes, Isabel? I see your hand up, but I don't hear you. So if you're asking a question, please unmute yourself. Oh, in the chat, you said, I don't think I was able to follow how to put in the text. Okay, so actually in Illustrator, we don't put in the placeholder text. We just create a text box, click on the type tool, and then just make a text box, like boom. And it self-fills. You know how in InDesign we had to say fill with placeholder text? In Illustrator, it just makes itself. And the only reason I have you make a bigger one first is because I want to have more text to overset. So if you started with a little one, you won't have much. So that's why I said, you know, pull out a bigger box just so that we have some overset text. Then you leave the text box and you grab it and make it smaller so that we have some text to pick up. Is that working now, Isabel? Yep, hand is down, so I'm assuming that means that it's working. Yep, yes, okay. So now, once again, pick up from that little red dot. It's this, seems like it in Illustrator, it's a bit smaller. So it's not that smaller. It's my Mac has everything is smaller in resolution than the one that I show in VDI. But anyway, you put that little box, you have it here. And again, so now that little kind of square edges to my text, parentheses around that little text, and square edges to my text again. Okay, if I start here where it's square edges to my text again, then it's just a thread. It's a new box that gets threaded. That's not what I want. So I'm gonna undo that. What I want is to touch this path. So I'm gonna go and touch the path when I have the parentheses. Now, if I drop it, then this is like what we did in InDesign. The shape gets filled with text. So this is exactly what we did in InDesign, remember? We fill the shape with text and it's threaded, okay? And I could modify, I'm gonna move it up a little bit. So this is exactly what we did in InDesign. Now, let's pull out another star because now we're gonna do a different effect. So now it came out filled with black, whatever color it gets filled with, it doesn't matter. Let's go and pick up from this one any more text. And if you don't have any more text because you didn't make that much of a box, just make this one tinier so that you have some more text to pick up. I don't know how much you have. I just want more text to fill to pick up. And now I'm going to show you a third choice, which is I'm going to hold down my option key for the Mac, control key, so alt key, alt for the PC, option for the Mac, and see how I get this little like kind of thingy. And now when I click on this path and let go, oops, nope, it wasn't, it's the command. My shortcuts messed up here. Okay, I don't remember what the shortcut is, so let's go to the type on it. It's a combination of shortcuts and somehow it's not. There it is. I wasn't selecting the shape, that's why. Okay, here's the issue. I didn't have my shape selected, that's why it wasn't working. So select your shape, go to the selection tool and select your shape. If you had it selected, it was working for you. I had forgotten to select it. Now pick up your text. And picking up my text. And now select your shape. My God, it works when I do it. Sorry, guys, I'm running. I was working there for a second and then suddenly I don't have. I'm gonna have to just copy paste the text because right now I can't get the right shortcut. I'm supposed to get the one that I got before, which is. All right, the text has to be selected and you have to be on the type tool. Select your shape, be on the type tool. Okay, so to select your shape, you have to be on the, to select it, you need to be on the arrow key, select it. Then move to the type tool. Once you're in the type tool, then when you hover over the shape, you have text outside, text inside. Okay, that would have been the equivalent of filling the thing with shape. But when I hold down the Alt or Option key, you get this little kind of a squiggle. See how it becomes like a little curvy, like a little, like a swoosh. Holding down the Alt or Option key, hover over this, and when you have that, you can simply click. And that is giving me the text on a path. My issue is that I was trying to have it follow that, and that wasn't what was working. And so for now, forget that it's threaded. Let me see if I can thread it. I'm going to thread it later, but right now it started from the beginning. See how it says lorem ipsum? That's the very beginning of the text again versus the threaded path. So let me repeat this because I messed it up so much in my explanations that basically don't pick up the text for now. Just make your star. Right, when your star is made, then you can make sure it's selected, then go to the type tool, then head over to that shape. Either you fill it when it's circular like that, or you pull down the Option or Alt and get that little line that curves, then you click. And that gives you the shape. Now, I'm going to give you how many times you see a star that's filled up. It's not typical, but I'm going to give you a circle. And this is a very typical thing, is to see text going around a circle, right? For logos and stuff like that. So it's very typical to have text around a circle. Okay, so this would be how you would have text in and out. In the Illustrator class, we're going to delve much deeper into this conversation. So to know how to do this much better or much more efficiently, take the Illustrator class where I'm going to tell you a lot more about this. But because this is Illustrator and now you can paste into InDesign, mind you, since this is new, I have pasted shapes into InDesign, but I haven't yet tried whether you can paste text as well. So let me format this text in some fancy way. I'm going to give it, some other font, and let me just copy, go into InDesign, and because I know you can do vector images, but can you also do text? Let me see. Nope, it came in as just text. See that? I thought that might be pushing it. So I'm trying to paste it in here. And I'm not getting the circle, I'm just getting the text. I thought, well, let's give it a try, but no, that's one too many things. It wouldn't make sense because it's not really a vector shape. It's just a shape that your text is lying itself around. So anyway, that's the limitation, okay? All right, so it's 5 minutes to the end of class and I wanted to show you one last thing. Doesn't make sense because I want to be able, I was going to go into Photoshop and it'll just take us 5 minutes for some of us to even open Photoshop. So I'm going to start with this next week. So for now, save this Illustrator file. We're gonna move these two shapes. By the way, and I didn't show you, but yes, had I put in text in a shape, in a star or any shape, had I put in text when my mouse was inside of it, then that's when it would have filled. Let me make it, filled with that text. So let's do that again, because I need to fill it with bigger text. I'm going to make the small text again be what I want. Give a different shape that's more interesting. And now I'm going to go and fill that shape with the text, just to show you that you can do that same thing, kind of what we did here. So it's the filling with text when you have a circle. See how it doesn't look very filled-ish? So I find sometimes that center justifying text that's going to be in a circle works better. So over here in the paragraph, you can go center justify, and then it tends to adhere better to its shape. It looks a bit more like its shape. It's never perfect though, because it's text and your shape doesn't necessarily work completely. If you tell it to justify and force it, then you have these weird things. So, there's almost a limit. I think center justified text is the best. And but when you walk away, you see how it isn't a perfect circle. So sometimes it just takes the right text to fit to make the exact shape that you want. All right, let's save this Illustrator file and let's add it to our files. And so, not to this very class files, but the Design Techniques class file is illegal. And I'm going to say text on a path. And I'm going to save it as a .ai. We haven't really saved an Illustrator file yet. .ai is Adobe Illustrator. Okay, text on a path and more. But anyway, this kind of does it. Go ahead and save. And when you save an Illustrator, it's going to ask you, do you want to save in this version? Just say okay. Don't change anything here. Just say okay. And there we go. This is our basic test in Illustrator. There's more to make logos and stuff. You use a different thing. We're going to come to that next week. In my InDesign, we have all of our, we didn't create this shape here, but we brought it in from Illustrator because it's a vector shape. We could have placed it. The only difference there that had we placed it, it would act like this image. It would act like an image that's linked. And since we placed it, now it's its own independent shape. It's not linked. So we were able to modify it and change it with the InDesign vector shapes, but the same wrapping worked for both of them. Okay. All right. Any questions? Please add screenshots of this also to the Padlet. I'm going to do a refresh. I see people have been posting. Have been posting their stuff. Text on a path, text go crazy. Great practice. Low text, wrapping text, Christina. Great. Cheyenne, by the way, when you see how Cheyenne has this empty box up here, that's a frame that hasn't been used. It's an empty frame. So frames in InDesign that have nothing in them show up as a big old X. Okay, so that's just an empty frame. Okay, I haven't showed you an empty frame yet, but that's what it would look like. Since she had an example, I pulled it up from here. All right, great. I'm seeing lots of good text wrapping going on. Cool. All right, guys, keep posting. Here I'm seeing some more examples, two-tone with bleed. So again, if you keep finding stuff to share that shows different examples, would be nice if you guys found something that no one has put in here is yet one tone. I showed you one example of one tone. It's harder to find. It was that little, it was purple where the deep purple was the color of the text and then lighter purple. That wasn't even two-tone. That was like one color. See if you can find something like that. Yes, Susan, you have a question?
Just before, I guess you go, I'm having trouble getting, the text in a circle, but I don't want to hold everybody up, but maybe
Sure.
at the very end. you
No,
could
well,
just-
everyone can go when they go. Class is technically over a minute ago, so at this point, if you need to go, go. And this is when I ask question, you ask questions and I answer. So, yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and hang out. And other than that, see the rest of you next week with some more samples of materials that you find around home, and then also give me some samples of flowing text around or stuff like that. But I had told you one more thing today. I have one more thing. I think that's it. Didn't I say at the beginning, give me more of something? Did you guys write it down? I didn't. I normally write down what I give you guys as homework.
Oh, you wanted us to do the business card.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I knew there was something else. That's the one that comes after the demo I did this morning of find some of the design specs that some company, write down which company it is and what the design specs and what they call, you know, the wrap, the text, the area, that kind of thing, and if it's clear. All right, so do you want to share your screen then, Susan, so I can give you a hand?
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay, can you see that?
No, not yet. So after you, the first share, then you have to click another
Oh.
share, bottom right, a second time. Are
Got
you
it.
on a Mac or on a PC? There we go. Okay, so, so there's your shape.
I've got my circle.
All right, so go to your type tool now.
Okay.
And now hover over that circle. And if you go to the edge where you go to the top because you want it to start, well, wherever you start it, the text will start. So normally we'll start it.
Or like
And-
very top of here.
It doesn't, yeah, normally. If
Okay.
it's a logo, usually it'll start kind of the other way around. It'll start kind of like on the quarter,
Lower.
like left side or whatever. It depends on what you're doing. And now that you have your mouse in the right place, if you were to click right now, it would fill the circle with text. That's
Right.
that circle. So instead, hold down the Option key and get that little kind of a squidgy. It's hard to
Okay.
see, but there, and
Yeah.
now click. And then
Thank
your
you.
text
I
follows
was
around.
trying all kinds of crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
that's fine. It's just that there's also, if, go ahead and undo, and this is an extra for everyone is still hanging out. You could just go and find the text, go over to the T again, where you picked up your type tool. And if you don't remember the shortcut, click and hold the T, click and hold the T,
Oh,
where you pick up your text
Oh,
tool.
yeah.
Click and hold the T. And it just gives you the tool type on a path tool, right? Just go click on that one if you don't remember the shortcut. And then you're in that mode where all it can
Okay.
do is that little swooshy. So now you just go to the path and click and it drops in, right? From wherever you. clicked.
wherever you are. Okay,
So
perfect. Thank you
that's,
so much.
but if you hang out with that one later, you might not know how come type isn't working. So you have to go and select the regular type tool, right? I prefer doing the shortcut to bring it up when I need it, but if we forget how to do it,
I'm
just
terrible
push
at
it.
shortcuts.
Yeah, exactly. I could see when you went up to the
I know,
undo.
but undo, I know.
So here's my suggestion. While I'm here calling it out to you, just force yourself, because it's a muscle memory kind of thing, right?
That's true.
When you're on your own, do what you can. But if I'm saying Control T, Control Z, just take that second to try it, because that's what's going to make you good at it. Just
Yeah,
doing it.
So
right?
much faster.
During the hour and a half or 2 hours, 3 hours that you're with me, give it a try. Force yourself to listen and do it, because it's literally, it's a muscle memory thing. That's all. That's why it confuses me. I work officially on, when I work, I'm always on a Mac. But when I teach, or when I have a client that has a PC, for some reason I need to work on theirs, I do the PC. But that's what goes crazy, because my muscle memory wants to do one and then does the other. But when I can just focus on doing it my way, it just goes so much faster and you don't have to think your shortcuts, right? So anyway, just push yourself during class. That'll be a push for you, right? To really
Sounds
try.
Good, thank you.
And I won't be able to monitor it. It's up to you, but it's just a recommendation. Okay. I'm noticing that I've been crooked all this time. So let me straighten out so that next time I start a Zoom, I'm not falling over. Okay, guys. See you in a week. Some of you guys on Thursday and the rest of you guys on Friday. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.